Good afternoon. It is 12 o'clock on Monday, June 15, 2020. We would like to welcome you all to the fifth International Research Conference on Emerging IT Trends in Asia and the Pacific, what we like to call ITRC 5. This event is brought to you by the University of Asia and the Pacific Department of Information Science and Technology. We'd like to introduce ourselves. We'll be your masters of ceremony for the afternoon. We won't be saying much because we have a jam-packed session scheduled for you this afternoon. But we'd like to introduce ourselves anyway. My name is Remy E. De Leon. I am the Communication Officer for Research from the Center for Research and Communication, the research and consultancy partner of UANP. And I'm here as a guest host with the Department of Information Science and Technology. And I'll pass you on to my partner for this afternoon, Isabella.
Hello, I am Isabella Malo of the Department of Information Science and Technology, and I will be your other host for today.
All right. So, what have we got for you next? Uh, like I said, we've got a busy schedule for you this afternoon, so we won't take much of your time. We'll go straight to the opening remarks by the Dean, the beloved Dean of the School of Sciences and Engineering, Dr. Florencio Gaa. The Department of Information Science and Technology is part of the UANP SSE. Dr. Gaa, very nice to see you.
Good morning to you all. I welcome you to the 5th International Research Conference organized by the IT Department of the University of Asia and the Pacific. But before I go any further, I would like to welcome especially our keynote speaker, Mr. Alan Bora, the Director of IT Services at the De La Salle University. We are honored to have you here to address the participants of the conference. We believe you will set the tone of the conference to a very high norm that we hope we can sustain until the end of the conference. I would also like to welcome the most notable personalities who have graced this conference with their presence. Mr. Ray Gentadeo, a member of PACOCOA and member of the Faculty of Graduate Studies at the World City College. Mr. Marshall Anasho, also a member of PACOCOA and at the same time IT Program Head of Centro Escolar University in Makati. Director Geraldine Padua, the Director of the Institute of Computing Science in UST. Mr. Rafael Alonso Aquino, member of the faculty of the QMIT at the Ateneo de Manila University. Dean Danny Umoso, the Dean of the College of Computer Studies at the University of Cabuyao. Mrs. Marites Fontanilla, the IT Program Head of St. Paul University, QC. Mrs. Jessica De Megilio, the Department Head of Computer Education at Xavier School. Mr. Rodel Villares, the Head of the Corporate Social Responsibility and Technical Support at Trend Micro. These honorable ladies and gentlemen will also be acting as plenary chairs for our conference today. And to all the participants of the conference, the faculty, the staff, and the students who will be presenting or listening to the presentations, a warm welcome to you all. Well, the theme of the conference, as you will have read, is contextualizing information technology through business and education. Well, I must say that this topic could not have been more timely than it is today. The very fact that we are conducting this conference online is testament to the most unusual and unprecedented situation, which requires of us new ways, new means, and new methods to be able to keep up with the needs of the times. We are in a crisis, and we find ourselves in a situation as if by accident. None of us could have foreseen the present situation and what consequences it would bring. So as if by surprise, we in the education sector find ourselves groping for ways to keep up with the need to complete our course offerings. We were caught in the middle of the second semester of last academic year with a large portion of the course content needing to be delivered. Well, that's only a portion, a tiny portion of the problem, because if we step back a little, we see that the whole fabric of society is affected, not just the educational institutions, really the whole economy ground to a halt. And business, that is the business and education that we refer to in the theme of this conference, has been reduced to the business of staying alive. I say staying alive in the wider sense, because the threat not only came from the virus, but also from hunger and starvation. I was just reviewing the recent registration history of the conference, and I found that the conference registration began on the 15th of December 2019, which is about 5 weeks before the outbreak of the coronavirus in Wuhan, China. I would therefore be, well, I believe, too much to expect that papers directly addressing the problems of the current crisis to be presented in this conference. But correct me if I'm wrong. I would certainly be very happy to see some very relevant IT solutions to the problems we are facing today. Well, I've done a little bit of my own investigation into the possible areas of development. I asked myself in my own limited environment where I see some urgent need for applications in information science and technology. Well, to answer that, I need not go very far, really. And the answer, it seems, is not so very new either. Business schools around the world have been exploring into new methods of pedagogy to help businesses navigate for tomorrow's industry needs. And among the technologies that have been around for some time, but have never before become as relevant as it is today, is the online and experiential teaching. Clearly, the term online has become a byword in the last 3 months. But the concept is not simply that knowledge is imparted online, as it is closely delivered in conjunction with experience. Experiential tutorials via virtual reality training may become a formidable alternative to classroom teaching, thus making the transition from student to professional more seamless. One clear offshoot of this is the widespread rise of the massive open online courses. This is, of course, nothing new, but the onset of the COVID crisis has certainly given it a sudden rise in popularity. It does bring about many advantages, which will remain even after the world gets over the COVID crisis. For example, any aspiring student can learn from anywhere in the world he happens to be. Several studies in the United States have even dared to say that it may bring about a revolution in the education industry, with the sad result that many existing educational institutions may be driven out of business. Well, needless to say, we in UANP are watching this very closely. In Harvard, in other well-known universities in the United States, Michigan, University of California, there has been successful experimental use of the flipped classroom. These are virtual classrooms where students watch their lectures at home via their computers and do all the assignments during a pre-arranged class time. Early studies have shown that learning outcomes have been enhanced as students are able to study at their own comfortable pace. There have also been developments in the area of adaptive learning. Traditional classroom learning is based on the assumption that everyone learns at the same pace, which everyone knows by experience to be false. Adaptive learning makes use of tools derived from data science and artificial intelligence to customize the learning experience of each student's capabilities. I also found a variation of the aforementioned, the above. It's called customized learning experience. While assessment in the traditional classroom is done by tests or essays or reports, students in the customized learning experience program are given the freedom to express their learning in non-traditional ways, like song or artwork, or even interpretative dance. With the wider availability of modern digital technology, educational institutions have been exploring various other learning outcomes for assessment. It's now gaining popular acceptance that the new learning methods may include interactive games, modeling tools, video production, etc. Well, I must admit, I did not really do an extensive search on this subject. I only wanted to know enough to see the general trends and directions, especially in the field of education, where, for the sake of survival, I must have a keen interest. I would expect to see a broader treatment of the theme, of course, in this conference. I would only like to state as a parting message, as I want to do in every conference, that this is a learning experience for all of us. Research must be viewed as a kind of, well, it's often viewed as a kind of competition by many other institutions, or let's see who's the most advanced. We'd rather see a conference as a meeting of minds to enrich ourselves, each one enriching the other and being enriched ourselves in the process. I would therefore encourage everyone to see the common ground on which we all stand and the common problem we all face together. Let's use what we know and find IT solutions to solve them. Well, with these parting words, I wish you all a fruitful conference and a good morning to you all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gaa, for that speech. We now have our keynote speaker, Mr. Alan B. Bora, the Director of Information Technology Services from De La Salle University.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see my screen? Good. All right, so this is me trying to escape from our current realities. But thank you for granting me this time. My conversation is about managing IT for education through enterprise architecture. And it may seem theoretical for now, but consider it's about, we are, as with any private universities, we are in a space by which we are struggling to survive as a form of institution or even on a personal level. So this will be our, I apologize, I'm so overzealous here. I actually prepared a lot of slides here and a lot of possible things to show you. but I'll try to manage this. I'll try to work within the objectives of this conference. So I'll talk about who are our students now and who they are with respect to teaching and learning. What is enterprise architecture and how does enterprise architecture drive value? And I have a hammer of choice. We call it TOGAF. That's the Open Group Architecture Framework. And turns out there are actually some universities in the world that are using enterprise architecture in the way they manage and to have visibility with respect to managing IT and the complexity of the university. I do have some videos to show you here. Uh, one is about a child. Can you hear the audio? I'm not so sure if you can hear the audio. Okay, hang on.
So then I was looking on YouTube to Andrea Bocelli. He has a beautiful voice and I
Can
really
you hear
want
it
to
now?
sing like him and was listening at the words and sing with the computer so that I can do the same with my mouth. I was doing this and this and this and this. And then I was
Oops, sorry. Let me continue that.
my favorite part from the song is at the end because then I can put all my drama and at the end there's a high note and then I can do yeah. So yes, that's very beautiful the song.
So that's one. She just learned how to do opera singing by just watching YouTube. The same manner here, we have two men performing judo by just learning it through watching again videos online.
The thing about learning online is that it takes a lot of dedication, it takes a lot of discipline, and you pretty much have to be your own coach. And you have to find a partner who is just as willing to put in the time and the effort as you are. Jiu-Jitsu has changed me in a lot of ways. I feel way more confident, way more fit. It's something that I've wanted to learn for so long. And what I found personally different about Jiu-Jitsu is it gives an average person, even a smaller person, a chance to defend themselves against somebody large.
So I'll stop there. So we're getting the sense here that our students these days, our learners these days are really attuned to the online environment. 2007 when they first released the iPhone. And by 2025, I remember my nephew, he was 2 years old, so that was 2009. And he saw that the iPad is a broken magazine. See, he kept on, I'm sorry, the magazine is a broken iPad. That's my metaphor. And I saw, one video by which a baby was doing this on a magazine because the pinch and zoom, well, that's a very primordial kind of action. And for that baby, it seemed like the magazine was a broken iPad. And this was 2007. The iPad was released 2010. I foresee that by 2025, these babies, these first-year-old in 2007 becomes 18-year-olds. And they are now given licenses and they are now given the mechanism to actually participate in our society more, more, I would say, more explicitly. They drive, they have licenses, and we cannot afford really to have students, so our kids back then. So they were really trained to be this. They were really trained with their iPads here. They're the digital natives, and then and that's why by 2025 there's already as early as now there are conversations about driverless cars because this and their attention to their iPad in front of them cannot match with someone driving. And so these are the things that we are actually preparing for. as a university as well. Who are we with respect to how we treat our students? And so I talk about enterprise architecture. See, universities are basically complex organizations. There's a business layer to it. These are our strategies, our organization structure, the functions, the processes, and all the data that moves from one office to another. There's also the data architecture. These are the types and sources of our data, the logical data assets, the physical data assets, and the way that we manage our data resources. And there are the applications, all the way from as simple as or primordial as a notebook that stores our notes and our thoughts, or through a more sophisticated like Google Drives and the different productivity tools that we have now. And finally, we have the technology by which these are the structures and interactions with different platforms for services. Do we do it on-prem? Do we do it on the cloud? These are the conversations with respect to the technology architecture. So let's have a metaphor. See, enterprise architecture, before I was analyzing this as a form of a vehicle. We have the dashboards in front of us. There's the driver. Basically, that's our CEO or effectively the heads of our organization. And there's people in the back. I'm still in the car metaphor. They're the ones going along for the ride, and these are possibly our teachers. But the analogy of the car can only go as far as that we can have that analogy. And so I think the more appropriate way of creating an analogy here is really about city planning. So we have a city called an organization or a university. It could be as complex as that of Manila, or it could be as straightforward as how it was designed, like Fort Bonifacio, wherein in Manila, it has organically grown through hundreds of years, and street signs and and sizes of the streets move from pre-Spanish era of Aritons all the way to our big buses. And so not much has been changed actually for how it was designed through the years. And that gave the Fort Bonifacio an opportunity to prepare for such. And that's why it's architected in a way that we know when we need to go from one place to another in Fort Bonifacio, we just follow the numbers because the street signs are numbers. I'm looking here because my screen is right here. So furthering our analogy or metaphor, in a city, we have buildings. So our business processes are effectively the building architectures. Consider that these are the different big structures in our city called a university, right? If we are to manage our IT using a university analogy. These are effectively could be our finance building. This could be our teaching and learning building. This could be our research building. So each of these big buildings here may represent the big processes that a university may actually perform. Then we have utility plan. In a city, we have utilities, and effectively, these are your uh, elect, elect, electric wires and transmissions, and this could be your pipes as well for the basic utilities, right? Water. And consider these are actually the way that data moves across these different buildings, right? And the more connected these buildings are with respect to the utilities, then effectively we have more coordination and collaboration across different processes. Furthering our metaphor here, we have the construction materials. See, we can really have some, we can have marble tiles, really. We can have first world kinds of materials or construction materials. And then they are analogous to our applications and even to our technology. So consider, uh, we can have the world-class data center, or we can actually create enough kind of infrastructure, a data center, or we can have the cloud. So all of these considerations bring up to our construction materials. These construction materials are are effectively the means for us to construct and to enable the big buildings. So going back to our city planning analogy for enterprise architecture, the business processes effectively are the applications actually are buildings if you think about it. The city layout, the overall city layout effectively is an orchestration of all the different business processes. And we have information or data moving across these different buildings. That's our utility plan. And our building blocks, the construction materials, these are our technology. Right. So what does really EA offer here? We talk about, because technologies these are big investments. And we have to ensure that there are benefits really whenever we are performing investments. And hopefully we can optimize these benefits. Right? We can optimize our investments such that we provide value to our stakeholders. So I'm talking to uh, IT directors right now who are probably in the same space. Generally, this is how we operate. Well, not this structure here. Normally, we have business planning and we set out our goals and strategies for this year all the way to 5 years. But we almost immediately transform them to number three, project management. We immediately create projects out of the different strategies and goals of the university or whatever institution you're in. After which, upon delivery of these different projects, then we operationalize them to provide feedback to our planners again to plan for the next year or the next 5 years. So the value proposition of enterprise architecture really is to optimize and to manage the complexity of these different projects. Consider that there may be projects that have a huge intersect among them. And that's what enterprise architecture provides for. It gives us visibility of what are the resources or what are the different kinds of existing applications or data or technology that we may already have in our possession and actually we just need to reuse. And so this now influences our projects and then the scoping of our projects and the timing of our projects. So in a way, enterprise architecture brings value by actually providing and organizing the project management office a means to scope out and to put in timings so that our resources are optimized. All right. So just to give you now a bit of a deep dive with respect to business architectures, and we call it BDAT, Business Data Application and Technology. So the business architecture, what does an architecture really look like? So for some of us, when we think about architecture, we think about blueprints. But in the space of business and blueprints of business, we think of a different way of actually surfacing the business strategy into one possibly diagram that anyone can look into and look at. So capability model is one kind of one form of a diagram that supposedly captures the strategy or the business of an organization. I'd like to show you what's up with the LSU. So here's an example of the business architecture, and we call it the capability model for the LSU. We currently have our enterprise resource planning for the LSU. We do have an ERP existing right now, but we foresee we need to upgrade it. And so we started off with an enterprise architecture work for the LSU. And so notice here, we have in a university, we have teaching and learning as captured by curriculum assessment and instruction development. We have research and we have mission management. We have student support and design, service design. We have operations management, and we have stakeholder relations, engagement, and management. These are effectively our core activities as a university. And of course, we have our support. We have our HR, our IT, our finance, facilities, risk and compliance, external relationships. Oops, sorry. So if you think about these big buckets of processes, and then what are the interactions between them. Consider that this is actually one way for me to have visibility of what really is my intended, uh, the first priority when it comes to supporting the university. Am I to support more on facility, or am I more on supporting teaching and learning and research? So this view here gives me an idea of what priorities are to be set, what energies and what resource optimizations I am also to provide in the space of managing university. Right. And then we have the business architecture. So what I'm showing you here effectively are the different process portfolio. So these different yellow boxes here are effectively different kinds of process groups. So I've shown you that earlier. Here we have HR, we have IT, and we have financial resource management. This is also my means for creating a new organization for IT. So I'll show you an example of what are the different boxes when it comes to IT. In IT, we have what we call IT customer relations development and management. And these are the different activities that one IT office can perform. I need to understand customer needs. I need to understand the transformational needs of my customers. In the space of IT business strategy, I need to define the business technology and the governance strategies as aligned to the overall strategy of the university. I need to develop and manage IT resilience and risk. I need to manage my information or my enterprise data and all of that. And this gives me an idea of the different boxes that I need to compartmentalize and focus on being in IT. And so, again, in the space of the value proposition of enterprise architecture, it really is about managing complexity. Because, and I suppose with all the IT people here, we are effectively the responsible group for business continuity of our institutions. And so for me, I need to, there's lots of conversation about, and it's always about I'm the most important and I'm the most urgent. I need to balance that. And then for me to have this kind of view and aligning it with the overall capability of the university, I know which ones to prioritize. So that's on the business layer. Turns out there's a cooperation. So one process group can actually communicate with another process group. So the arrows here indicate the conversations and the information flow moving from one process group to another. And that's also being captured or being diagrammed or being documented as part of an architecture. Furthering our conversation, we now have mapping of our process groups to that of our applications. So it turns out that ERP, or in the space of enterprise resource planner and whatever uh, big applications we have, there's an opportunity actually to address multiple offices with just one platform, right? So I have an example here. No, I don't. So in this conversation, a certain application could be mapped to a different process group, right? So what it means is that in the space of a student life cycle or student records system, it actually can support effectively my curriculum's assessment. It can support the LaSallian mission management because they need to see who the students are and what their current activities in the space of extracurricular activities. It also supports student services design and delivery management, the customer relations and the front-facing activities of our registrar and our enrollment and our uh, services for the students. All of that accesses the application called Student Lifecycle. And so these different activities here are supported by just one platform or one system. And then we have application layer. We have the application architecture. So effectively, that's what I meant earlier. We're in applications like a student lifecycle system or a finance system or an HR system can enable and support a particular process. So if you have an HR information system, that effect of HR information system, that's the boxes in blue, and these blue boxes could possibly be the functionalities that these applications offer or provide, and they effectively enable or service a process group. And that's also being documented. And then we have the technology layer. So the applications are basically housed in a particular technology layer. Is it in the cloud? Is it on an on-premise data center? Do we have database servers in our on-premise data center, or are we using the cloud? So all of these technology layers are also documented and are also mapped to our applications. It's in such a way that when I turn off a server, I already know what office in the business process layer is going to shout or going to say ouch. So that's the level of or the degree of documentation I'm talking about. All right. So that's an example of enterprise architecture and the way in terms of managing it. But other views or other ways of architecting whatever institution actually is what we call road mapping. And part of the discipline of enterprise architecture is performing what we call current state and target state. So you see here, I hope you can see it here, we have what we call a target state, or I'm sorry, the current state for an application. I hope you can see it. So this is on the application architecture. And this is one good example from a certain organization I just got from the internet. And this is one good example by which the gap between a current state to that of the target state on the other spectrum of the document shows you one glaring aspect here, wherein, oops, from the enterprise performance management, there are different platforms or software here, Oracle, Hyperion, Planner, and that's in the current state. But on the target state, it just moves to Oracle. So we can already see that there's a movement and rationalization of different applications here. And from this diagram I'm showing you, it somehow is an example of a merger of two big companies, wherein one company already has an existing platform and the other companies also would have its own platform. And what it does is now to move or migrate to a single platform, right? And these are coming from two different entities. And so there's a need to manage that transition from this view here, which contains three different applications, to just a single application. And notice there's a big gap in the middle. So this big thing here with arrows seemingly look like arrows are effectively our transition from one view, which is the current state, to the target state. So effectively, these are now our projects. These are now the fillers of gaps, and the fillers for gaps for me are expressed as projects. So projects are effectively the change. These are the transformational activities of an institution. So you can see here that before I can move from one platforms of three to a platform of one, I need to create an enterprise performance framework. I need to have business intelligence foundation. I need to have enterprise planning budget and budgeting, enterprise content management, and enterprise portal. So effectively, it's about telling the whole group, the whole stakeholders that are involved in this space here or in this domain. We need to have a framework, we need to have content management and all of that. And notice we have some other diagrams here that tells us actually it matches that of the overall strategy of the organization. So we also map it to the overall strategy of the organization, wherein probably a year or 3 years back, the organization says we need to have a respect and excellence and ownership as part of our overall strategy. And to express that, we have to drive accountability and so all of that. and notice that having these kinds of activities allows me to map my specific project to a particular kind of strategy. And this is one big view of all of that, right? And then in the space of managing complexity, that's what enterprise architecture is providing for us. And then, and to and we're using the same thing for DLSU. So I'll give an example. Let's say in the space of our student lifecycle management, we have the different process groups here, and what we did was also to give uh, a form of maturity scoring for our different spaces or the different process activities, so that we can target and we can also prepare activities to support them to move from one level of maturity to another. So the red one here indicates that we're very poor. And the orange one is effectively a better scale in terms of maturity levels. And the intention is to move to an orange or a blue or ultimately a green. So here's effectively what the maturity levels would look like. Red would be initial, managed, defined, all the way to optimized. And in the space of this diagram here, where is it? Okay, so in this space or in this diagram here, I know that what's critical to DLSU is the three main things. We have the teaching and learning, the research, and the Lasallian mission. And so we need to be green in these different boxes. If we are just currently red or orange, then we have to have mechanisms and activities and projects to ensure we move from one maturity level to another. And we have the support group to enable that. And so that's an example of an enterprise architecture's headspace. Oh, the time right now is 12:42. I overshot. I think I'll stop here. And I think the overall goal of my talk is really about how do we manage complexities, right? One way is to really surface them. One way to surface them is actually to document them. And there's so many ways of documenting them. It could be as simple as narration, and that's effectively unstructured way of doing it, or we can do it structured way. What I'm showing you is a structured way of doing it, using diagrams and some standards way of doing it. What we're doing is we're making use of APQC, that's American Productivity and Quality Center. They created a process classification framework. And we also made use of one notation, we call it Archimate. Archimate is an example of an enterprise architecture way of describing things from the business all the way to technology. And we are also making use of what we call business process modeling and notation. So all of these effectively are unprecedented way of documenting and hopefully servicing all of our processes and all of our documents and all of our data into one big giant repository such that it now becomes visible to everyone. And we're now operating not just on legends and folklore and transfer of culture by just by word of mouth, but now through a documented way of doing things. So that's the first step for me. It's really about the heavy documentation, and especially for a 100-year-old organization, it's ironic that we have different levels of documentation, and now we're making it really a singular and focused activity for the university. And hopefully that manages the complexity of what it is to manage a university, a 100-year-old university, with all the cultures and all of that. So I'll stop here. I'm opening up for questions, and I apologize. I overshot by 20 minutes. Told you I got overzealous. So yeah, so I'll stop here, and I'll take other questions now. Or better yet, I turn it over back to the hosts for them to manage the program.
Thank you, Mr. Bora, for the incredibly long and detailed speech. Now we will be introducing our first batch of plenary chairs. We have Marshall L. Anasio, Jessica J. Demigilio, Geraldine A. Tikman Padua, and Danny U. Umoso.
Our next set of panel chairs are Rafael Alonso H. Aquino of Ateneo de Manila University, Marites Fontanilla of St. Paul University, Quezon City, Rodel Villares of Trend Micro, and Rijan Tadeo of the Commission on Accreditation.
And
And
now
I,
we have
yes,
our
sorry.
first set of presenters presenting agile methodology implementation with comparative method to implement an inventory system for a retail company. We have Derek Daniel P. De Yuna and Vincent Joshua V. Kaluwag from the University of Asia and the Pacific.
Good morning, everyone. Our topic is about agile methodology implementation with comparative method to implement an inventory system for a retail company. We'll begin with the introduction or the background of the company or the client. The client is a retail company of sewing machines, parts, and anything related to the clothing industry. They supply to some of the well-known brands around the world and a distributor for a multinational electronics and electrical company. The company has more than 3,000 clients and has over 18,000 inventory items. And they cater to a lot of customers on a daily basis. They sell about 10 to 30 units a day, which costs around 10,000 to 50,000 pesos per unit, depending on its model. Keeping track of an inventory of this size is not an easy task and a very important one, as their units can't be considered as cheap products. Next, we'll move on to the problems of the company. First is there's very heavy repetitive manual checking of inventory. So this happens when a customer asks or wants to buy a specific product. The salesperson will check for the item availability in the system inventory and the physical inventory. So quite often the counts will not match, and the salesperson will then have to record this, and at the end of the day will have to manually correct the system inventory to match the physical inventory. And when this happens, actually it happens on a daily basis, and the company will have to pay for the employees overtime, which is about 2 hours per day. It may not be significant loss of money and time when you look at it on a daily basis, but it could accumulate, and there are ways to prevent this. Also, the system revealed to be cumbersome to use, according to some of the users. Some parts of the system would be showing a form or a fill-up form for purchase order or a sales invoice, or when adding a new record. And when the user tries to edit an input, let's say on the middle of the form, all the inputs that were already encoded would be deleted, and the system would prompt the user to start at the top of the form again. And it becomes very annoying for the employees to use, and they have some complaints with the system. Since the company already has an existing system, the researchers want to explore the use of comparative method in software engineering, because developers can have a better view of two models when they are side by side and judge which model is more efficient and more effective. The developers can put different models together that are designed to do the same thing and formulate questions and assumptions as to why one model is better than the other. This way, overlooking fields, data, or functionalities can be avoided. For our research objectives, first is to identify the root cause of the issues using a comparative method. Then we want to describe the inventory system appropriate to the business operations. For the related literature, we looked into sales invoice and purchase order. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So a sales invoice is a document issued by the seller to the buyer, which contains information of payment due on products or services sold. A purchase order is, on the other hand, a document issued by the buyer to the seller, which contains information of products and services being ordered by the buyer. This is relevant to the study as keeping track of these documents will make it easier to trace the transactions that the client will take part in. An inventory system can integrate these documents in the system in order to use the data that these documents contain to control the inventory in the system and synchronize it with the physical inventory of the company. Next, we looked into an agile development, which is a development method having incremental versions that are small, and typically new releases of the system are made available to customers or clients every 2 to 3 weeks. The main focus of Agile is regarding software is design and implementation. Activities such as requirements elicitation and testing are incorporated into design and implementation. This way of software development is ideal for software with swift development schedules and rapidly changing requirements, such as the case of the company in the study. Next is extreme programming, which is a technique in agile development and considered as the most significant approach to changing software development culture. It's an approach that was developed by pushing recognized good practice, such as iterative development, to extreme levels. Progress is divided into batches, and customer involvement is at a satisfactory level. Every batch of additional functions is viewed by the client in the presence of the developers. Suggestive and constructive feedback from the client is processed by the developers. This makes it easier for the developers to adapt to the new changes which are expected to appear throughout the development cycle. It also has a principle of having an on-site customer. This means that a representative of the end user of the system should be present and part of the development team so that the user can have instant access and use of the system to ensure that he can give feedback almost immediately and bring this up to the development team. This practice will prevent functionalities that are buggy or from being implemented and integrated into the whole system. The principles of extreme programming will help developers establish the right functionalities and how the system will process data. Overlooking essential functionalities and data fields can be avoided by using the principles of extreme programming. Next, we look into comparative method. It's a process of comparing situations, groups, which are similar yet differ in known ways. This approach is applicable in this study as the company already has an existing system. Documenting it in such a way that the client can understand, like showing differences of two tables or diagrams that can help the client to communicate to the developers which table or diagram is better and what are the missing. Doing a comparison between the two systems is very sensible because it shows where one system is lacking, and this can be integrated in the next release of the system.
Okay, so up next we have the methodology. And for the research design, the developers built the system according to the specifications of the client and compared it to their existing system. The developers approached it through an agile development. More specifically, they used extreme programming as a way to clearly establish the requirements of the company on the system they will develop and the specifications of the system. They were developing the system while also integrating requirements elicitation and testing into it. Incremental versions of the system will be presented to the company and feedback will be given by them. The feedback would include requests for changes, approval, and rating of functionalities and design, and plans for future specifications and requirements. After the incremental versions were approved and validated by the client and was able to produce the desired outcome, the developers compared the design of the database of the newly developed system with their current system. The differences were pointed out, which explained how their current system failed and how the proposed system succeeded in producing the desired outcome. The data used in the research were gathered using 3 different methods. The information used in the initial development of the system was collected via interviews with the client. Multiple interviews were done to collect specific details, such as potential user requirements, business operations, and recommendations from the future users. In this phase, the researchers are also free to observe and go through a demo of the current system of the client. The second procedure for data gathering were inquiries via mailing on electronic platforms. At the prototyping stage, the main method of interpreting customer feedback was through a scoring system. Every end of sprint will yield a different feedback. The different kinds of data gathered from user requirements all the way down to customer feedback is useful for the researchers in determining what their next course of action will be. For validation, in order for the developers to determine whether the design and functionalities are correct, they required customer feedback at the end of each sprint. Using an evaluation form, the client was able to give feedback on the incremental versions of the system. A scoring system in different aspects is implemented in order to properly and accurately distinguish what needs to be improved and what was done to cater the customer needs and expectations. This also served as a basis of whether the client validated and approved the system or not. For the results, their current system was inefficient because their sales invoice generation is not integrated with their inventory, and the inefficient design of the database. This figure shows their current data flow for the process of a customer buying a product. Now, this figure shows the proposed and new data flow for this process in order to simultaneously update the product quantity when a sales invoice is generated. These diagrams clearly show the difference in the flow of data. The developers proposed and implemented in the system they were developing that the sales invoice is integrated with the products as shown in figure 2. For every product that is included in the sales invoice, the quantity of the item purchased will automatically deduct from the inventory count of the product. The system will also include this functionality and is also taken into consideration when designing the database. A foreign key is present in the sales invoice table to represent the products. When the system is operating this way, the system will automatically process this by a functionality that is included in looking at the sales invoice and product tables in the database. The system is also troublesome to use because of its buggy functionalities and unexpected events being overlooked by the developer. A system may have no errors or bugs, but if a user is not using it properly, it can produce undesired results. Upon observing what the system is executing, the design of the database overlooks some of the fields that are essential information that can produce the right functionalities. The users, as a result, become flexible on how they use the system and adapt to its present functions, which results in countless human errors. This shows the fields of the table where the product were lacking an attribute called item category code. The system did not have a functionality that the users needed, which is to sort them according to their category, whether machines or parts. When that attribute is present, the system can sort them according to the category they will make use to make it more convenient to use. In conclusion, the requirements prompted the team to create a new inventory system and pinpoint the root cause by utilizing the comparative method. Thank you.
So that's all for our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. We have our next set of presenters now. Presenting exploration of various deep learning models for increased accuracy in automatic polyp detection. We have Ariel E. Hello, we can't hear you. Would you please unmute your mic?
Okay, hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Ariel Isidro, and with me is my advisor, Dr. Arnel Pajardo, and we're presenting our paper titled Exploration of Various Deep Learning Models for Increased Accuracy in Automatic Polyp Detection. Okay, so we go to the first slide. Okay, so what we have here. So one of the most fatal cancer is the colon cancer. So cancer is one of the four epidemic non-communicable diseases or lifestyle-related disease, which includes cardiovascular diseases, diabetes mellitus, and chronic respiratory diseases. So cancer remains a national health priority um, as stated by the DOH. So colon cancer is ranked number 3 for new cases, and it's ranked number 4 in deaths. Now, we want to find a way to detect colon cancer. So how do you do that? So here we have here the third artificial intelligence or AI boom is coming, and there's an inkling that the speed of its evolution is quickly increasing. AI has evolved and is diversified at a remarkable pace in medical diagnostics, especially in diagnostic imaging. So therefore, this paper focuses on AI in medical diagnostic imaging and explains the recent development trends and practical applications of computer-aided detection using artificial intelligence, especially deep learning technology, as well as some topics surrounding it. So here we see the evolution of CAD or computer aided diagnostics. So we see here computer aided diagnostics or detection as second reader. Then we have here now first reader. So in evolution, we want to automatically diagnose colon cancer. Well, what do we have here now? This is a framework of the convolutional neural network. So the primary purpose of convolutional layer is to extract features from the input data, which is an image. So see here the horse as the input image. Then you have the pooling layer. Pooling layer reduces the dimensionality of each activation map, but continues to have the most important information. Then you have there the fully connected layers. So fully connected layers refers to that every filter in the previous layer is connected to every filter in the next layer. The goal of employing the FCL is to employ these features for classifying the input image into various classes based on the training dataset. FCL is regarded as final pooling layer feeding the features to a classifier that uses softmax activation function. The sum of output probabilities from the fully connected layer is 1. So this is ensured by using the softmax as the activation function. The softmax function takes a vector of arbitrary real valued scores and squashes it to a vector values between 0 and 1 that sum to 1. The diagram here illustrates a typical convolutional neural network. So it consists of three main elements, which are the input image, the convolutional layer, and the prediction layer, which is the output here. So the input image is the original image to be trained. Mhm. Given that the input is a colored image, then it shall be decomposed according to the intensities of the red, green, and blue as described in the RGB color model. CNN layer is normally a three-stage layer starting from the convolution. During this stage, the input image is convolved using a predetermined filter or kernel and yield a matrix called a feature map. By convolving, the dot product of the kernel and the region under is computed. The kernel is moved using a sliding window technique, pixel by pixel. After convolution is the activation function. So several activation functions could be used, but the most popular one is the rectified linear unit function or the ReLU. Okay? This function retains only the positive values and removes all the negative values. So the graph is like this. After activation is the pooling layer. At the pooling layer, several algorithms could also be used as average pooling and max pooling. But the most commonly used algorithm is the max pooling, where the maximum value for each sliding window is retained, leaving all the smaller values. So this is AlexNet. So AlexNet is a pre-trained CNN. It is an ImageNet classifier with deep convolutional neural networks. Its model has picked up great feature abstraction for a comprehensive collection of images, which is around 14 million, organized according to the WorldNet hierarchy. So transfer learning can also be done in AlexNet. This takes a pre-trained model and utilizes it as a base to gain knowledge on different tasks and do feature extraction. This is another technique. So you search for data. Chances are you find a data set that has around a few hundred images. So here, let us say this is one image, a cat that is standing. Now, you can augment your data set by changing the position or rotating the image. So in CNN, it is important to have a large data set for good performance. So that is why you augment your data. So minor changes such as flips or rotations. So our neural network would think these are distinct images. Flip vertically or horizontally, rotate clockwise or counterclockwise, rotate by 15 degrees or 30 degrees. So that will add up to your data set. This is VGG19. So VGG19 is a variant of the VGG model, which is in short consists of 19 layers. So 16 convolution layers, 3 fully connected layers, 5 max pool layers, and 1 softmax layer. So VGG, which stands for Visual Geometric Group at Oxford, replaces the AlexNet. The data preparation for this activity or this research. Okay, so we have here a data set. So the polyp and non-polyp neural file are first generated from the original data set of polyp images and the corresponding ground truth. Images are resized and scaled into usable form. So after generating the images from this step, the images are not uniformly sized. So we have to resize and scale to be usable. So uses database from the CVC Clinic DB consisting of 968 different images. Okay, so we split that into three sets. So 80% for training, 10% for validation, and the remaining 10% for testing. For the model training, here, shown here is a table of the result of the model training. So uses database, okay. Uses database from CVC Clear DB. So we use high epoch value to determine values result in high accuracy rate. One epoch is a complete pass-through of the entire data set. Now here we have here accuracy and training loss table. So overfitting is noticed when the validation loss goes up against training loss as in M1-1. Okay, so here the validation loss, the accuracy. So this is overfitting when the validation loss is more than the training loss. The confusion observed now. So this table shows the training loss was minimized in figure on the right because okay. So the training loss was minimized. The training was minimized in figure on the right because it flagged down to 0 while the accuracy percentage goes up to 1. So here overfitting is solved. Now this is a confusion matrix. The confusion matrix in figure above shows 100% of reductions model polyp. So here this is 61 to 61. So it classified the polyp and normal accurately. Now this is the receiver operating characteristics. So the receiver operating characteristics of our C card figure shows 100% true positive, which means the model is able to classify correctly the data set. So in conclusion, technology advancement and application of transfer learning in deep learning models have direct applications to medical detection and diagnostics, like detecting polyp and non-polyp to images. So transfer learning produces different high percentage of accuracy by experimenting different models in the CNN. So therefore, this study which states that it improves results from exploring pooling layers, data augmentation, fully connected pre-trained CNN layers as feature extractor without BGG and SDM is correct since the highest accuracy from among the experiments made is the augmentation with dropout of 0.5, 0.5. So transfer learning was used in this paper because it applies dropout, Adam optimizer, tuned model, and overfitting from previous studies. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for that presentation. We will now move on to our next presentation. Cultural Web Application from Mandaya Ethno-Linguistic Group of Maragusan, Compostela Valley by Gerald Christopher B. Baclo from the University of Santo Tomas.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. This is the cultural web application for Mandaya Ethno-Linguistic Group. I'm Gerald Christopher Bakla, and let's begin. The Mandaya Ethno-Linguistic Group. It is an ethno-linguistic group is defined as a group that is unified by both a common ethnicity and language. Mandaya derives from man, meaning first, and Daya, meaning upstream or upper portion of a river, and it therefore means the first people upstream. In further details, who are they? Mandaya refers to a number of groups found along mountain ranges of Davao Oriental as believed as their customs, language, and beliefs. They are divided based on their topographical location of residence, which are the lowland and the upland Mandaya. Moving on, the project context. The Mandaya Ethno-Linguistic Group of Maragusan Compostela Valley. They are located in Barangay Languisan, Maragusan Compostela Valley, or as now we know, Davao de Oro, Mindanao. And they are considered to be the most inaccessible and poorest barangay in the area. They are confronted with a problem that affects the quality of their hidden treasured cultural heritage because of the continuous change in the environment, economic activities, and geopolitical landscape. And also, only few materials are available, and sometimes it's very difficult to qualify if these materials are authentic because of some adaptation. There's no current existing digital content available online that concerns the cultural heritage of the upland Mandaya, and specifically the Barangay Langoisan Mandayans. Moving on, purpose and description. The project was a platform for disseminating information to the public about Mandaya Ethno-Linguistic Group, thereby providing a better understanding of the uniqueness of their culture, as this platform was not yet existing. It aimed to promote and preserve the intangible cultural heritage of Mandaya Ethno-Linguistic Group, providing original contents, records, archives of the cultural materials, and documents to the general public. They had access to the resource materials that this study would require about Mandaya's rich culture, and that includes their visual material, such as the text, audio, and video that are in electronic media forms, so that more people can be educated of their history, religion, products, culture, tradition, art, lifestyle, music, language, and clothing by this web application. And the people that would benefit from this project are the specifically the Mandaya Ethno-Linguistic Group of the said barangay, and as because their recognition could strengthen their support from the general public that would be aware of the group's political and cultural and social issues surrounding them. And moving on to the general objective, the general objective of our project was to develop a cultural web application for Mandaya Ethno-Linguistic Group. And to be specific, the objectives are to create a module for viewing and browsing contents for web viewers, uh, to create a digital library that would store information about their culture, and to provide a module for maintenance that will manage contents and the users. Moving on, here are the scope of our project. It includes to develop a web application, and this web application shall contain the view module and the dashboard module. And this system shall be managed by the admin and the content managers, and it would be used by the web viewers. This system contained a content management module, an archive module, and an approval module, a digital library module, a user management module, an auditing module, And this system applied restrictions for downloading and copying contents from the web application to comply with the with the intellectual property of these contents. Moving on to our limitations, the project was limited to having the images and videos regarding their traditional clothing, such as their headdress, which are deemed sacred, are not to be featured in the digital library in the respect of their privacy. And also, commenting and social media integrations are not featured in the system. And the archives of this system only contain the title and description of the articles. And the project only had contents specifically about the Mandaya Linguistic Group of Barangay Langawisan, Maragusan, not the complete Mandaya Ethnolinguistic Group. Moving on, these are the functional requirements of our system. There are four main functions that includes the login and logout, the management of the contents, the management of the users, and the viewing of the contents for the web viewers. Okay, moving on, the non-functional requirements. For reliability, the system must handle multiple requests with multiple users simultaneously in a given amount of time without failure. Usability, the system must have a consistent look and feel across all modules. And performance, there must be consistency on the level of performance of the software and the amount of resource used under stated conditions. And finally, the security, there must be access restrictions implemented to protect the contents of the system. Moving on, this is the overview of the system. Here is a visual presentation of the organization of the function present in the system and its interaction. The system is divided with the view module and the dashboard, which can be the view module, which can be accessed only by the web viewers, and the dashboard can only be accessed by the content manager and the admin. Moving on, here is the user interface of our system. This is the dashboard login. The admin and content manager users can log in and reset their password using their email in this page. And moving on, inside the dashboard module, the admin and content managers users can add, remove, and edit posts in this page. Moving on, admin and content manager users can upload and delete files in this page in the manage files. In the manage archive, only admin users can export archive posts on their local device. Moving on to the manage users, only the admin users can access this page where they can view, create, and delete content manager users. And here's the manage user updates, where only the admin users can access, also where they can view, approve, and deny pending update requests made by the content manager users. And lastly, the view module, where the web viewers can view and search posts and files in this page. Okay, moving on. Here is the summary of the test case for the functional requirements of the system. There are a total of 75 test cases designed for the system. And the module with the greatest number of test cases created is the manage content module. And this module includes the adding of posts, editing a post, removing a post, exporting a post, and uploading and deleting of files. The rest are follows. The manage user module, which had the second greatest number of test cases, and the report module being third. The login logout module with the least number of test cases. And moving on, these are the results of the test cases from the functional requirements. In the first trial, a total of 9 errors were found, and most of them are found in the login and logout module that was particularly concerned with the forgot password functionality, and the rest was in the manage content module that concerned the delete function of the video and video files and the remove function of the post that affected the archiving of the post. In the second trial, the login logout module still encountered the same errors as further updates were made and applied to the process of the forgot password functionality. The developers were able to fix all the functionality errors during the third trial of the web applications. Moving on to the summary of the test case results for the non-functional requirements, a total of 22 test cases were made in each trial by the developers for integration testing of the non-functional requirements of the web application. In the first trial, a total of 5 errors were found, and most of them are found in the performance test cases of the web application, where the system was not able to perform specific functions that affected the tests, such as emailing of password reset link and the uploading of files. And moving on to the second trial, here, a total of 4 errors were found as some functionalities were able to be fixed and the errors were decreased, but the upload limit still retained. The developers were able to fix out the errors during the third version of the web application as they are due to the limitation of the web hosting, particularly concerning the file size, upload limit, and email receiving duration that affected the performance of the system. Okay, and moving on. For the conclusion, the developers were able to develop a web application for Mandaya that it could be managed and maintained by the admin and content managers without extensive difficulty. With our user acceptance tests, and it could manage content such as video, image, audio, and document files stored in the digital library collection of the system. Could also manage the articles that contain both text and image in each article. It allowed the admin users to manage the access of the content manager users, as the content managers could manage posts and contents in the web application upon the approval of the admin. Moving on, it is secured from cross-site scripting attacks as the input and restrictions were effectively implemented that restricts the web viewers from accessing and damaging the system and the contents. And moving on, the export function enabled the admin to download each archive post from the system in PDF file format to their local device. And finally, the contents of the web application includes the images gathered by the team of students and faculty members during the UST ICCS Community Development Project in Barangay Maragusan, Compostela Valley, during their visit in September 19 to 23 of 2018. And lastly, our recommendations. The web application should have an analytics feature that would have data visualization about the view counts of the articles. And it should have a mobile-friendly user interface to improve user experience and performance. And also, it should have a commenting and social media integration for the web viewers that would allow them to share their opinions about the articles. Moving on, the dashboard module should have drafting features that would allow the users to save their articles without posting them to the view module. The admin should also be able to repost articles from the let's wait. Let me put it back again. Here, the admin should be able to repost articles from the archives back to their previous pages. And lastly, the content manager should have a notification feature that shall allow them to be informed if whether their requests were approved or denied. That is all. Thank you for listening. I'm gonna end it right there.
Thank you for that presentation. We will now be moving on to our next presenter. Presenting Enhanced Network Design and Security Implementation for Kaunlaran High School, we have Edrea Yuki C. Yumul, Patrick Johan S. Aiko, Joshua Earl F. Sarmiento, Miles Darrell U. Tan, and Engineer Ranina Ricardo Kawili Tayuan from University of Santo Tomas.
Good day to everyone. I am Edrea Yuki Yumul, and these are my group mates, Mr. Patrick Johan Aiko, Mr. Joshua Earl Sarmiento, Mr. Miles Daryl Tan, and um, our technical advisor, Assistant Professor Nina Tayuan, and we are here to present our capstone project entitled Enhanced Network Design and Security Implementation for Kaunlaran High School. Kaunlaran High School is a public school in Navotas, Metro Manila that offers education for the 7th up to the 12th grades, and their principal is Dr. Cristina Castillo Miklat. So at present, Conlaran High School has a scattered and disconnected network topology with 3 separate subscriptions with their ISP. They also have no Active Directory or any network security measures in place. And they also mentioned the possibility of expansion in the GHS building. So project our project purpose is to first enhance the network of Conlacan High School, second to implement security measures to protect the network, and third to create a project that will benefit the administrators, the faculty, and the students of Conlacan High School. So the general objective of our capstone project is to implement an enhanced network infrastructure and to implement security solutions for Conlacan High School. Specifically, our project aims to design an enhanced network that will integrate the 3 isolated networks of Conlaran High School to configure network devices, to implement security measures, and to establish a server farm. Um, our project covered the integration of the 3 separate networks of Conlaran High School, the recabling of the network in accordance with the proposed topology, to provide redundancy, the configuration of group policy infrastructure, file service management, and manage service accounts, and the implementation of a server farm, which comprises of a DHCP server, a file server, a domain controller, and an Active Directory. Our project was limited to covering the junior high school and the senior high school buildings of Conlaran High School, the use of simulation tools such as GNS3 and VMware to create and test the network, and the devices used for the partial implementation was limited to what was already available to the client, and the solution to the client's upload speed problem is dependent on their ISP subscription. Our project required the use of hardware that is currently available to the client, including Cat5e and Cat6 cables, PLDT routers, 24-port gigabit switches, 16-port gigabit switches, 8-port fast Ethernet switches, 300 Mbps wireless and router, and 21 units of their computers. And we proposed the addition of a 28-port managed switch, 2 units of that, 15 units of 20-port managed switches, and an Intel i350T4 quad-port network interface card. Our project also required the use of software such as GNS3, VMware, Windows Server 2012, Windows 7 or higher, Cisco IOS, images, and pfSense firewall.
Onlaron High School, which is divided into 2 buildings, had 3 ISP plans for internet access. In the 200 Mbps plan, the following rooms were connected. Inside the senior high school building are Office of the Property Custodian and 4 computer laboratories. Inside the junior high school building are GHS Science Lab, Office of the Principal, and Office of the Executive Secretary. In the 100 Mbps plan are the Accounting Office, Tech for Ed, and the Head's Office. The Assistant Principal's Office, which is in the SHS building, had a separate 15 Mbps subscription. Next. This topology shows that the 3 separated networks for the 2 buildings and 1 department are now integrated into one network. The proposed network will now use the 2 core switches specifically for both core and distribution layer functionalities. A server was dedicated as the file server, the HCP server, the NS server, and the domain controller. To prevent unwanted web sessions during school hours, A firewall was set up to filter unnecessary websites that are not suitable for educational use. Next. Due to software limitations of GNS3, the proposed network design was slightly modified to run on the said software. The two ISPs were reduced to one in the simulation as it lacks the capability to run more than one internet instance. Smart TVs and wireless access points were not included in the simulation as GNS3 lacks the appliance template to run the said devices, and there are also no OS images available to simulate such. This same goes for the thin client PCs of the three laboratories of the school. Since it cannot be simulated, they were replaced by individual PCs. Next. In the original design, there were three separated networks and three ISP subscriptions. There were only access layer switches and a router in the network. There was also no server, aside from the thin computing servers in the computer laboratories and no firewall in place. In the simulation, there is now one integrated network connected to a high-speed plan. There are also layer 3 switches acting as a collapse core switches. A server was added to provide file server, the HTTP server, DNS server, and domain control functionalities. Plus, a firewall was added for URL filtering. Next. Property custodian computer policies have a strict complexity to ensure account security and to avoid any unauthorized access. School faculty and school staff computer policies have the most relaxed restrictions as these users tend to forget their passwords due to their job priorities as a school faculty or school staff. Students' computer policies have a major restrictions as students must learn and remember basic password etiquette for both offline and online accounts. Next, user policies for property custodian disables all restrictions for efficiently manage and control settings that are suited for the school network. User policies for school, faculty, school staff, and students have more restrictions to prevent unwanted modifications. Next. Folder access restrictions were configured according to specific organizational units to limit unauthorized access of files within the file server.
In our simulation, we configured SSH in all of our network devices. Here is a screenshot demonstrating the property custodian's PC connecting to the SHS switch 1 using SSH. Here we used Wireshark, a network monitoring tool, to capture the network traffic during the connection. Port 22 indicates that SSH was used, and with that, the message contents, including the password, were encrypted and were not readable in plain text. As part of our security configuration, we configured web filtering using pfSense. The following categories were blocked. Social media was not blocked at the instruction of the school, as they use it for file transfer and communicating with their students. As demonstrated here, pfSense blocked an attempt to access one of the restricted sites. Next slide. Here are a few images from the partial implementation of our project. Next. To test the internet connection speed of the school, our team used speedtest.net to test the network download and upload speeds. Test was conducted thrice before and after the project's partial implementation. 3 tests were then averaged for a more accurate comparison. As seen through the testing, only the speeds of the rooms JHS Tech 4 Ed and SHS Complab 2 showed a significant change. Our team saw that this was due to the fact that the two switches were initially connected to a fast Ethernet switch, which was only capable of running up to a speed of 100 Mbps, as compared to the 2 other rooms which were directly connected to the network core switch. For the file transfer test of the network, our team manually measured the file transfer speed of each room from the office of the property custodian. We transferred files of sizes 500 megabytes, a gigabyte, and 2 gigabytes, and manually measured the time it took to transfer the files using a timer. This was conducted 3 times before and after the partial implementation. The average time it took to transfer was taken. In the table shown are the data to transfer the files between the property custodian's office and the Tech 4 Ed room. Before the project implementation took about a minute to 3 minutes to transfer the 3 files, but after the implementation, it took only about 5 to 22 seconds.
Through this research, we arrived at the following conclusions. The research was constrained by the hardware that was used to run the simulation. The researchers used a PC that was equipped with an Intel Core i7 6700 and 16 gig of RAM. The iOS versions were used already past the end of support. Some features need higher iOS versions to work. The simulation consumed a high amount of system resources, resulting to a decrease in simulation performance. Next. The entire proposed network could not be simulated as a whole due to hardware limitations. Gen S3 does not have some of the appliance templates necessary to reflect the full proposal. These are our recommendations for the client. We recommend the actual implementation of the server farm and the managed switches, and we recommend replacing the thin client PCs to standalone computers to improve performance. Our recommendations for future researchers who will be using GNS3 to run a simulation of a similar size is to use a PC with at least a 4th gen Intel Core i5 processor and 16 gig of RAM. They should also consider implementing more security features in pfSense and to use currently supported iOS images. To, to avoid setbacks, researchers should clearly define and discuss the scope, limitations, and implementation schedule with their client. They should verify that the extent of the implementation is feasible. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you for that presentation. We will now be moving on to the next presentation. Applying vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, VAPT, and network enhancement on the network infrastructure of Journey Tech Incorporated by Joan V. Turnio from the University of Santo Tomas.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. So I will be presenting to you our project entitled Applying Vulnerability Assessment and Penetration Testing, or VAPT, and Network Enhancement on the Network Infrastructure of Journey Tech Inc. So Journey Tech Inc. is a logistics company based in Parañaque City. So for the project context, the idea behind this project, the client actually wanted a project that would focus on their security, and we all know that with the development of technology and network infrastructures, there has been a rise in hacking attempts and an increase of cyber attacks. And with that, we have identified that there is a need for a process to regularly detect and remediate these network vulnerabilities. So through this project, the researchers will introduce to the company a vulnerability management process, and this process will promote regular scanning and assessment of the company's network to identify exploitable vulnerabilities before attackers use it against them. So for this project, the VAPT approach was used, and we added remediation and verification phases to it. Moving on, the general objective is to create and implement a vulnerability management process, implement remediation to the vulnerabilities found, and propose an enhanced version of the network on a device level. For the specific objectives, we have the following: replicate the 12 servers and one firewall appliance of the company, to perform a vulnerability assessment scan on the simulated network using a tool that we have implemented that I will mention that later on. To generate a report on the results of obtained from the vulnerability assessment scan, to perform penetration testing, again with a tool that we will implement, to implement remediation based on the reports generated, and lastly, again, to propose an enhanced version of the network on a device level. So following this project scope that we have identified to include the following. So again, we will replicate the devices of the company on virtual machines, creating uh, a replicated or a simulated environment. The installation of OpenVAS, an open source vulnerability assessment tool that will scan the network devices using their IP addresses. So following that, we will be conducting the vulnerability scan on the devices, which will include the scanning of well-known ports, uh, which will be followed by generating a vulnerability assessment report. Again, installation of an open source penetration testing tool to conduct a penetration test, to implement the fixes or the solutions to high severity and common vulnerabilities based on the report generated by OpenVAS. And lastly, the proposal of the network enhancement on a device level. So the project limitations, as you may have observed, the tasks for this project will be done on a simulated environment. It will all the tasks will be done on the replicated network, and due to the simulated environment limitations, a similar topology from the company's current network topology will be built with one switch and a minimum of 4 end devices, which will hold 12 replicated servers and of course one firewall on virtual machines. Now, these replicate servers will include the server configuration, and due to the client's restrictions, actual data will not be provided. The company and devices are not included in the scope of this project, and the execution of the vulnerability assessment scanning and also the penetration testing will be done on the simulated network, as we don't want to disrupt the live operations of the company's network. So for the methodology of the project, we use the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing workflow, which consists of the following phases. First is the information gathering. We have included also here the replication of the network. Next is the vulnerability detection phase, followed by the information analysis and planning, where report generation will happen. Attack and penetration is next, followed by reporting and remediation phase, which we have included also a verification for this. For the system design, I apologize. There is a slight error in the presentation. For the servers, they are not yet remediated for the current network topology. So these are unremediated servers. They have 2 server rooms and they are connected to an unmanaged switch. So this is not their whole network. This is only the network that is part of our project scope. Now, to replicate this, we will be having this layout of having at least 4 laptops to hold the replicated servers and the firewall, an unmanaged switch, and of course, a device that will have OpenVAS and Kali Linux machines installed. For the replication, we use these details. As you can see, the operating systems that were used were Windows Server 2008 R2, for the Windows servers, Ubuntu 16.04 for the 4 Linux servers, CentOS 4.9 for the NAS server, and the FortiGate operating system for the FortiGate firewall. We have retained the company's server names. So for the OpenVAS task configuration, just a brief background on OpenVAS. The OpenVAS Vulnerability Assessment System, or OpenVAS for short, is a vulnerability scanner maintained and distributed by the Greenbow Networks. So it is intended to be an all-in-one vulnerability scanner with a variety of built-in tests and a web interface as shown on the presentation, designed to make setting up and running vulnerability scans easier. So as you can see, this is the scan task configuration that we use. For the scanner, we use the recommended OpenVAS default, and for the scan configuration, we use full and fast. So full and fast is the default um, configuration to start with, and it uses network vulnerability tests that will not damage the target system. So this is a big factor since we don't want to disrupt the operations of the network. So to summarize the results of the OpenVAS vulnerability scans, so as you can see, it is already labeled high, medium, and low. And this is based on the scoring system of the CVSS, or the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, which is already an industry standard for the description of the severity of security risks in computer systems. So as you can see, um, the active server garnered the highest number of high um, severity vulnerabilities with 82, and there are also some others that did not produce high vulnerabilities results. Now moving on, for the penetration testing, these are the primary attacks that we use. For the Windows servers listed here, the primary vulnerability that we exploited was the Eternal Blue vulnerability, which we use to leverage on and establish a Meterpreter session on Metasploit so that we can execute commands, malicious commands. And the same was done for the Linux, but we used the a simulation of an SSH brute force attack, and again establish a Meterpreter session to execute malicious commands. And for the FortiGate firewall, we used SSH and HTTP vulnerability exploits. For the remediation, as I cannot provide you with the full list of vulnerabilities, but for the most of the vulnerabilities detected, it really revolves around their systems, their packages, and libraries being outdated and obsolete. So the remediation phase of the project mostly included updating the obsolete and outdated software and packages installed on the servers. But aside from that, other solutions included installing fail to ban to prevent brute force attacks, and creating a self-signed SSL certificate. So to give you a comparison of pre and post remediation results, as you can see, we ran another vulnerability assessment scan on the remediated network, and it significantly decreased or reduced the number of results, some from 80 plus or 70 plus to 0. So this is the summary of their comparison. So to conclude, the researchers were able to perform the objectives of the project. And by performing the said tasks, the researchers were able to conclude that the active server of the company is the most vulnerable server. And in general, the Windows servers were found to be more vulnerable than the other servers with different operating systems. So all VAPT tasks produce results for all servers, but were not able to produce results for the firewall. The researchers were also able to test the suggested remediation solutions and fixes gathered from the generated vulnerability scan reports. And through this, the number of vulnerabilities were significantly decreased, as shown in the reports generated from the post-remediation vulnerability assessment. So this ends my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for that presentation. We come now to our conference's Q&A portion, where the panelists will be able to ask any questions they want to any of the presenters. We'll be keeping the rules for this Q&A loose so that we can have a freewheeling discussion. But let's just please be polite as we ask or answer questions. And for the sake of the audience listening, please mention your name when you speak and turn on your video so that we can keep track of who's who. Ladies and gentlemen of the panel, the floor is all yours.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I am Jerilyn Padua from the University of Santo Tomas. My first question is for Mr. Diuna and Mr. Kaluwag, who presented about the agile methodology implementation with comparative method to implement an inventory system for a retail company. My question is that how many employees are there in the company, and what is the sampling method used to be able to determine or choose the respondents who were made to answer the questions, which were mentioned to be about 30 to 50 years of age? Was my question clear?
Hello, Miss. Sorry, we had technical difficulties. Their organization had around 50 employees.
All right.
Miss.
And what was the sampling method used to choose the respondents to answer the questions on the effectiveness of your comparative
Mostly,
analysis?
Miss. The respondents we had were the employees in the position that would actually use the system once it's implemented.
All right. So all of them were made to answer and were sought information and feedback through agile methodology. Did I get it right?
All of the all of the most all of the users that will use it the most, Miss. So not all the employees in general, just a select few within their position in the company.
Okay, thank you very much.
This is Engineer Umoso. Question is to be asked to the Agile methodology implementation, Mr. De Luna. I'm actually wondering if you tried to include computations like t-tests to do or to quantify further comparative methods. Did you at least consider statistical tools to measure the difference between the different methods you have used in your comparative method?
Sir, excuse me, can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm actually asking if you did consider including statistical tools like t-tests to further quantify or to further differentiate the methods that you have used. Was it clear? I mean, my question.
Somewhat.
Since you are comparing two methods, so I was wondering if you at least considered using a statistical tool to clearly identify the difference between these two methods, the one that you've used and the current method being used by the company.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
Jessica De Leon.
This is Engineer Opos again for Sir Arian Isidro on polyp detection. Were you able to implement this, sir, and maybe verified by the medical sector pertaining the result of your study?
Not yet, sir. Not used yet. This is under research. We're just researching this, sir.
Yes. Just a follow-up question, sir. If this would be effective in detecting polyp for colon cancers, do you think this can also be implemented on other types of cancer, sir?
Yes, I think so. Because it uses images. As a matter of fact, artificial intelligence, deep learning, CNN are used in different medical fields and diseases, including breast cancer, things like that.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. I would like to follow up on the question of Mr. Engineer. Do you use high resolution images in order for you to determine or compare it with the existing or the normal tissue? For example, if you're going to determine if there is a cancer growth in a certain or in the intestines, do you need to have a high resolution images and compare it with the one that was captured to determine?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I think we need high resolution images. But the experiment we did was we just downloaded images from the CBC database. They are high resolution images.
There's no such thing as a standard image that you use in order for you to compare it with what is normal.
No, ma'am, because it depends on the camera.
Okay. So meaning it just focuses on the colon. What if you want to move it or go with the lung cancer, with the other? No, you
Yes,
just
ma'am.
focus on that.
Yes, ma'am, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Good
ma'am.
afternoon. This is Cheryl Padua again of VST. I have a question for the second presenter, Mr. Ariel Isidro. You mentioned that you included the algorithms trap out Adam for optimization and overfeeding. Was there any statistics that the performance of the algorithm with all the additional optimization tools degrade as compared to the previous study?
Regarding degradation, and there are different optimization tools. Adam is one of the most used optimization tools. There are references proving that. There are other studies that proves that, and we didn't show that in the paper anymore. As regards dropout, it's the same. We're actually trying to look for ways to increase the accuracy and speed of detecting the disease. So that's why we use dropout, we use optimization, and one of the optimization tools that we use is Adam optimization.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry, can you hear me? This question is for all those who presented. Just follow the presentation, how you were presented a while ago. I want to know the context of your study. Could you give me in maybe 1 or 2 minutes a short context on why you decided to select that particular research or study so that we'll understand better the target of your study?
Okay, can I start? So actually, this study was just started a few years ago when one of my uncles died because of cancer. Okay. After a few years, my auntie died of cancer. Then just recently, one of my pamangkin died of cancer. I don't know why my relatives are having this disease. I thought it was a rich man's disease. So I got interested in the topic. Then actually, I don't have idea what colon cancer is until my uncle died. I asked my mother, what is the cause of the death? She said cancer. What type of cancer? She said it has something to do with the bowel movement. And the closest that I know to bowel movement is colon cancer. So that was my motivation. Then during the research, I found out about colon, and it afflicts many Filipinos.
Thank you, sir. May I have the first presenter?
Yes po.
Tell us the background of why you decided to do the research.
Pardon? Sorry?
Hello. Yes, we decided to do a comparative method with with our client since they have an existing system, and we wanted to see the root causes of where the issues were coming from. So since it's also a small inventory system, we decided to do it from scratch instead of looking or doing a revision of their existing system.
Thank you. The second presenter, please.
Hello, ma'am. I was the first to answer the question.
Thank you.
And I was the second presenter.
Okay, let's move on to the third one.
Hello, yes. We chose our project because it would be beneficial not only to the ethno-linguistic group that we chosen, but it would also be very influential to many Filipinos because it will help strengthen their recognition of the culture and the other ethnocentric beliefs of Filipinos that we may not or may be aware. And this information is disseminated using our system that we designed from scratch, and I believe it would be beneficial for us and for our future as Filipinos. That is all.
Thank you. Next, please. Hello, this is Yuki. So for our research, we our client Conlar in high school was I met them through one of our community development projects, and I noticed that while they had fast internet, the infrastructure wasn't really the best configured in a way. And while our project was limited to just the school, when we conceptualized our project, we hoped that it could possibly pave the way for more researches regarding the infrastructure, the network infrastructure of public schools in the Philippines, especially since we have this online. It has it. I just realized that it has become more relevant now that we have this online learning. Thank you. Thank you. We have one last.
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon. This is Joan Ternio, and I was the last one to present. So actually, our client Journey Tech Inc. Suggested for us to do this project for them because they really wanted a project focused on cybersecurity or security, because personally they wanted to assess their current security posture and to be able to protect their network from future threats and exploits. And aside from that, the group, again, as I mentioned earlier, have really identified that cybersecurity has become a relevant topic, especially now that all transactions, business transactions, and operations have been transitioning online. And this is a great way to give other companies and organizations kind of like a basis for them if they want to start their own or implement their own vulnerability management process. So they can use our documentation and existing research as a tool for them, as a basis for them. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I have one more question for Ms. Yumul, the fourth presenter. In figure 8 of your abstract, you mentioned about the file transfer test. May I clarify if the file transfer done on the implementation before and after is through GNS? Are this both through GNS? Are this both on virtual simulation tool?
No, the file transfer was done during the actual implementation. So it was done using their actual PCs in the school.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask question? I'm Mr. Nasha. Can I ask question for the fourth presenter? In terms of the network design, I just noticed that you focus all on the Microsoft or the Windows. Did you consider using other operating system, considering that they're designing it for public schools so they can lessen the budget in terms of acquiring licenses or softwares? Is it clear? No. Did you get my question? No. Do I need to repeat my question for the fourth presenter?
I believe that's Miss Ternio. Is this
Okay.
correct?
Sorry.
Sorry, this is Mr. Nya, and I was the fifth one to present.
Oh, sorry.
The fourth one.
I think Miss Yumul was the fourth one to present.
Please repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just noticed that all of your operating systems, or you just inclined in using the Windows. Did you consider using other operating systems like Linux, considering that you design a certain network for the public school? And also my second question is, which is also the last, is that you just designed the entire network and running in one, which is using by the offices and the laboratory. They're using one network. Isa lang. You did not consider separating it for the laboratories or for the academics and for the offices.
Hello. So actually, as we utilized Windows, the Windows operating system, mainly because it was what was familiar to the faculty, to the administrators of the school. They weren't familiar with Linux, and they didn't have a dedicated IT on premise. So we figured that it would be best to use software that is familiar to them. Then as for separating the networks, we implemented VLANs for that, but we couldn't make the networks like physically separate due to limitations with the budget limitations. It would be more expensive to have more devices. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Mr. Umoso. I would like to ask Mr. Baaklo.
Yes, sir.
Since this is the first time Compostela Bali is actually creating a web application for Mandaya Ethno-Linguistic Group. And you're actually trying to create a library of their culture. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
You put some restriction to users. They cannot actually upload or at least contribute. So I was wondering why you did not include a possibility for the users to contribute as well, to do crowdsourcing. Anyway, you have content manager who could possibly curate whatever would be uploaded. So is this one of your future plans, or could you possibly include this as one way of improving the library of this system?
Yes, sir. It's a possible recommendation for the system, but as of now, it is only limited because the system is managed by the municipality of Maragusan, which all the files are coming from them and will be first verified by them before it will be inputted to the system. So that's why we don't have an opportunity for other users to contribute in generating data for the system.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My question is for Mr. Baaclo.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know if there is already an identified technical person who would take on the task of managing the web application for Maragusan. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We turned over the credentials and the access for the system to our to the team that we contributed with the ICS, USD ICS community development team, where we handed over the access to them so that they would be able to hand over the system to the municipality of Maragusan, of which they were supposed to be the ones to manage. That is all.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, Engineer Umoso for Mr. Neil.
Yes, sir.
I was actually wondering what type of tests you have implemented in your temp tests. Did you do the 5 different tests like the internal test, external test, blind test, etc., or you have selected a particular test to do temp testing?
So, sir, mainly for this project, we did internal testing. So, to simulate, it was simulated as the device, the penetrating device was already connected to the network. But if you would look at the documentation, I was told that you already have it, sir. There is one test that we did just to simulate situation wherein an attacker would send an email to a company employee, and then in that email is a malicious file which when opened would run a script wherein the attacker would already have access to the system internally. So we have one test for external, but for the most part of the project we did internal testing.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have one question for Mr. Isidro. Since this is, I think, if you think about it, it's really a breakthrough. Why do you think wasn't it used before?
As of now, when it comes to medical diagnostic, they want high accuracy. So as of now, we have not reached the accuracy that they want. That's why the technology is still evolving. So until such time that the accuracy and the speed that they wanted is reached. In medicine, they want 99% accuracy. some studies 95%.
This is Engineer Umoso again. I would like to ask Ms. Yumol. Actually, to both study, the fourth and the fifth study, you made use of PF SENS as penetration test for firewall testing. Am I right? Did you consider trying to make use of not an open source testing tool, like say Cisco ASA?
So hi, this is Yuki. For our project, actually, we did consider it, but as similar to my answer in the previous question, due to budget constraints with the client, we realized that a Cisco ASA might be too heavy on the budget, so we opted for an open source solution instead.
Okay. Do you consider PF SENS comparable to Cisco ASA?
I understand that there are advantages to using ASA instead, but I think for the purposes of our research, it's equivalent. For the purposes of our research, at least.
Thank you.
Hello, does anyone still have any more questions for the presenters?
I have no more questions, ma'am. Thank you.
No more questions.
All right, if there are no more questions, then we will move on to the intermission.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. I hope everyone's back. We've got our second batch of papers, of presentations for the afternoon, and we're starting off with someone from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. Always a pleasure having them over to speak about augmented reality ordering system with data analytics to support decision making in the restaurant chains. We have Montaigne Molejon.
Good afternoon. Okay, so my topic is entitled Augmented Reality Ordering System with Data Analytics to support the decision making in the restaurant chains. So by the way, as an introduction, just want to tell you that my study focuses on enhancing the quality of the customer experience in the restaurant industry. Wherein restaurants are really dependent on the customer experience, in which the customer satisfaction and their engagements is the core part of the growth of the organization. So offering a customized experience for customer is incredibly challenging in restaurant industry. Okay, and that's at the same time, the more better customer experience gain, okay, the more positive reviews the business can get, while simultaneously decreasing the customer complaints. So here, I have this list of the issues of the restaurant that affects customer experience, wherein there's in a manual way of ordering became the way that revealed that there were some issues being encountered by customers from choosing the food up to the willingness to order that can easily affect their customer experience. Number one is, as you can see, the actual figure or the image of the food in reality is different from the picture presented in the paper-based menu. So this is where they feel cheated when they receive it, because the food in reality looks nothing like it did in the picture presented in the paper-based menu. Okay. Second, lack of idea about the menu because of a large number of dishes that consumes times in choosing the order. Third is customer order same dishes every time that they visited to the restaurant due to the lack of knowledge about the other meals. Fourth is lack of idea about the real-time bestseller menus and menu pairings of the restaurant. Or in other words, it is failing to know the specialty of a particular restaurant. And then number five is lack of understanding about the primary ingredients of the meal to know if it's appropriate to their needs. This is due to the no information that can help them to decide what meal is appropriate for them, because maybe they have some health problems or other reasons like vegetarian. So it's very important for them to know the primary ingredients of every meal. And last is taking long time standing on the queue to just to order. Okay, so for my first section of the literature review that I examined, I found that the visual representation of a meal plays a huge part in ordering decisions of the customers. In fact, every time the customers see a very tasty image of food, on the paper-based menu, but the food does not look the same on the image when orders served to them, in that case, there's a possibility that the customers can give a negative feedback to the brand of the restaurant. And same with the long waiting times. Okay. At the same time, for the second section of the literature, I focused on the how to improve or the improvement of the customer experience towards with the use of the augmented reality technology and how it affects the customer experience. And I found that the customer had a positive perception towards with the use of technology, especially in restaurant industry. It could actually engage them more because of its form of communication, okay, to determine if the meal is appropriate to their needs and to select and try a particular menu that the customers enjoy to consume. So what is needed, which is an interactive way of ordering that will enhance customer experience. Okay, this is by providing a better access to information of meals, which will create more powerful form of communication. And other, is an increase of convenience in ordering, which is, I believe, by making it easier to place a food order or make a reservation of meals that is associated with the increase of the satisfaction. So here are the statement of the problem. Okay, number one, what are the issues and the challenges encountered by the customers in ordering that affects customer experience? Number two, what are the features of the software that can be developed to address the identified issues or the challenges that affects customer experience? Number three, what is the level of acceptance of the respondents on the developed software's usability using the criteria based on ISO 9241-11 year 2018 in terms of the effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction? And fourth, the suggestions and recommendations of the respondents for the enhancement of the software. Okay, so this is my proposed solution. This is my, as you can see in this image, I created and I developed an augmented reality ordering system that has a data analytics. This is to enhance the customer's experience by providing an interactive way of ordering. Wherein the main objective of augmented reality is to provide customers a wonderful dining experience in ordering by easily seeing the food in a three-dimensional model, helping them to have a better idea what would the food would be like in reality. So another example for the is a screenshot the real-time data visualization with a priori algorithm. This is my application of the, as you can see in this example, the presentation, and at the same time with the help of the a priori algorithm to easily suggest best menu pairings or to suggest what is the best combination for each meals. So these are the procedures and methods that I use in developing my research. First one is for my research design, I utilize the descriptive and developmental design method. Second is the research, for my research data or sampling, I use the homogeneous purposive sampling method in which everyone in the population of the inquiry has been selected for having shared common characteristics. And third is my own respondents for the customer who visited on the restaurant or in my client, which is the cafe, wherein customers were given a chance to assess the application based on their common experience. Fourth is interview and survey questionnaire, which is patterned to ISO 9241-11, is I use the for my research instrument. Okay, for my software development, I use the agile methodology as a guide throughout the development. Each phase of software development lifecycle was followed correctly to assure that the developed application system is meeting the standard by the ISO. So next is, as you can see, for the SOP number 1, okay, there are top two, as you can see, there are top two highest effect that can give negative feedback to the customers. First is the actual figure of the image food in reality is different from or not same with the picture being presented in paper-based menu. Second is taking long time standing on the queue to order the meal. Okay. And then for the SOP number 2, what are the features of the software? I use the research methodology for this developmental method. Okay, so wherein these are the features that I developed. First is using augmented reality technology, meals are viewed in a 3D object form. So this will be added to the physical environment using the camera of the tablet device to view the dish in a real size and shape. Second, it provides information about the primary ingredients, time preparation, and list of bestseller menu meals derived from the analytics. So third is enable to determine the availability of each meal. So the application can analyze and determine if there's one insufficient ingredient for each meal from inventory that would tell to the customer if it is available or not before they proceed to order. Fourth is the application can analyze the frequent bought meals that co-occur together with the help of a priori algorithm. So this is actually the intelligent component of my developed application, because the a priori algorithm mining frequent item sets and relevant association rules that operates on a database containing a lot of transaction, which is my data sets, bought by customers, which helps to reveal the buying patterns of the customers, which is to find groups of items that co-occur together. And lastly, it can place orders using the augmented reality application, which will then be sent directly to the kitchen screen display in real time. So for the SOP number 3, no, it shows for the overall interpretation on the developed software is highly acceptable with a total mean of 4.59. Okay. For the fourth, as you can see, finding shows that the tagging of these to leave comments should be available in the developed software so that whenever the new customer visits the restaurant can find those tags to see and review the feedbacks about the tag dish. And then for my system architecture, for the bulk augmentation, this is the architecture, how it works. Okay, for the my application will find the marker image so that for the application itself will for you to see the image, no, of the food. Next is, this is the architecture for my data visualization and the meal suggestion based on the a priori algorithm. This is how the a priori algorithm learn from the past preferences of my customers by using the confidence in support measurement, no? And I use the NoSQL here so that the application needs to connect to the internet to get all the information. And then ordering system architecture, this is the overall where the customer can place their orders and sent directly to the display kitchen. So for the conclusion, based on the findings, the researcher has the following conclusions. Okay, the most challenging issues that really affect customer experience in restaurant industry was the food expectation in reality, where the food should be same as what they see on the paper-based menu and also taking long time on the queue order meal. And then the respondent highly accepted the developed software in terms of the criteria set by the ISO, and the developed software is said to be the most effective application in providing actual figure of food with the use of augmented reality to give customers better idea about before they placing their orders. Also, most efficient in providing proper queuing of orders, which helps customers to eliminate falling in line and waiting. And the customer suggests function of tagging dish to leave comments in the best improvement. This is the best improvement for the developed software. So these are my references. Okay, thank you for listening. That's all. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Montaigne Molejon from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines for that presentation, which certainly made me hungry. Anyway, we move on to our next presenter so that we can get on to our Q&A as soon as possible. This next presenter team is from the University of Asia and the Pacific. They'll be talking about an agile methodology-driven approach to a sales inventory systems through a Scrum framework. We will have Mr. Enrique Chiodan III, Rowan Luke Gamboa, and Maynardo Boringot. Thank you very much. Are you ready, team? Could you say something just so we can be sure we can hear you?
Can you hear us?
All right, there we go.
Hello.
Thank you. Take it away.
So before we proceed through the operations and the deep IT processes of the company, we first wanted to introduce what our company, what IT system we're building for a company. So our company, the IT system we're building for a company is called Alpha Steel, Alpha Steel Home Furnishing Corporation. So they are the first marketing division of their mother company, and they are involved in the steel and home furnishing industry. Next. So what does Alpha Steel do? How do they conduct their business? So basically what they do is they market and sell anything that's related to steel and home furniture products such as cabinets, chairs, and etc. So in this diagram, as you can see, this is their business overview. It starts with the customer going to the branch or the store. When a customer orders something, the branch will record it through an order slip. Then it will be processed to the company. The coordinator will check all the order slips that went inside the company, and the coordinator will approve it. Once that it's been approved, they will have to check the customer's order, whether it's in inventory or if it's out of stock. So let's say if it's the product is out of stock, they will issue a purchase order corresponding to the order slip, which from the Marilao warehouse, they will give the purchase order to the production site. That is where the production site will manufacture the product and deliver it to the Marilao warehouse, which will be stored. So it's called a transmittal. Basically, it acknowledges that the manufactured product from the production site has been received by the Marilao warehouse. So once that it's been stored in the Marilao warehouse, that is when the company will deliver it through a third-party shipping service to the customer. And at the end, the customer will receive the product and the receipt. And in return, the Marilao warehouse will receive a proof of delivery that it's been shipped successfully to the customer. Next slide, please. So what are the research objectives of this study? So first, we wanted to identify the issues the client faces while also briefing them on the agile-driven approach. The second is to propose a system design based on identified issues. So next, Zach will talk about the methodology of our approach. Zach.
All right, so I'll start discussion with the methodology. First, we'll talk about our research design and participants. So we decided on the agile-driven approach because we wanted a collaborative interaction with our client, and it was a rapid delivery of minimum viable products with the client. And we would also have periodic updates to and from the client. Our contacts with the client were primarily the general manager and the branch employees. Next slide, please. So how did we go about things? So we had meetings and interviews with main office personnel and different employees of various branches. We also conducted these in end of sprint meetings with their general manager. So we had 3 sprints. We had 3 working days each. And we also had 30 to 40 minute bi-weekly meetings with the Scrum Master. So the tools we used here were user stories and Trello or a Kanban board. And we had an evaluation form for every end of sprint meeting with the client. So next we will have Rowan Gamboa to discuss the results and observations.
Okay, so after our meetings and interviews with the client, we discovered a couple of things. So just to review on the business process, the company would interact with the customer through order slips and delivery. The order slip is what contains much of the details of an order. The company would also interact with the production or their source of inventory via a purchase order and a transmittal. Purchase orders contain details of the product they are ordering from the production, and the transmittal is a form that would detail which items the production have delivered to the warehouse of the company. For internal movement of inventory between the different branches of the company as well as the warehouse, they keep track of ledger entries. These ledger entries take the form of Excel sheets and multiple spreadsheets. and they contain a transaction code to detail what exactly was happening, whether it was a subtraction or an addition to the specific inventory of a branch. An important thing to note here is the decision process of how they process an order slip. When an order slip comes from an employee at the branch, it would be sent to the coordinator for approval. Approval is necessary because these order slips are sent via email and often would contain human error when they're typing the details of the order. Once the coordinator has verified the details of the order slip, they would then proceed to check against the many ledgers they have of their inventory to see if this order can be met with their current stock. And if it cannot be met, they would then proceed to issue a purchase order. So what are the problems that we identified with their process? First is there's no automation. On average, a coordinator would receive 10 to 15 emails a day to process, and this would amount to roughly 2 hours of work each. And we deduce that this can be reduced because, in essence, the task is just comparing whether or not there is available inventory. The only the only reason it takes such a long time is because they are looking through multiple Excel sheets, which take a while to open now that they've accumulated a large amount of data since the beginning of their operations. Another problem is that they lack a single version of truth. Because order slips are being sent via email, there is reiteration and forwarding of the information. This introduces a lot of opportunities where the data could be altered, and they would often, or the possibility of losing track of what is the current state of the order slip, if it's been verified, if there are additional comments to be made, is often a problem for them to keep track of. And finally, there is no real-time synchronization for the inventory of the branches and the warehouse. Often when the order slip is approved by a coordinator, they wouldn't be able, or at least the branch wouldn't be able to know up until the coordinator would send them an email in response that the order slip has been appointed an inventory, or if there is information that the inventory requires a purchase order and therefore would take a longer time to be fulfilled. Looking at these problems, we designed our system. So first is the context diagram. Given that the current company doesn't have an IT system, we limited our scope to first focus on the three major entities of the system. That would be the branch, which would interact with the Alpha Steel inventory system, and the coordinator. The branch would provide the details regarding the order slip, and the coordinator would then provide administration controls over the system, as well as whether or not these order slips are approved and how they will be processed. Next is the entity relationship diagram for the design of our system. The current process they have keeps most of the information denormalized in an order slip. So in order to extract more data from an order slip and be able to provide value out of that data for their other departments in the future, we denormalized the order slip to be able to keep track of other information that could be of use, such as generating sales report from it and keeping track of the customers and their order slips, their purchasing behavior to some degree, as well as their expenses and related commission. To proceed to the client feedback we received regarding our system, I will give you back to Mr. Chuidian.
All right, so for client feedback, next slide, please. The prototype was evaluated on its ease of use, pleasant appearance, reliability, security, efficiency, completeness of function, completeness of system, and readiness of deployment. So to summarize our feedback, our prototype received a score of 3.58 out of 5, and our notable weakest point was the ease of use of the program, but our strongest points involved pleasant appearance and security. So to conclude, using Agile methodology, we identified 3 problems in the company: inefficiency of order slip processing, high degree of vulnerability to human error, unavailability synchronized and centralized data, and the system prototype was successfully developed, and the client had a deeper understanding of the Agile methodology and was increasingly motivated to be involved with each sprint. Not to end things, I'll give you back to Mr. Maynard.
Next slide, please. So it's us So that's me. I'm Maynardo Boringot, and two of my group mates are Ron Gomboa and Enrique Tridian. And our advisor for this study is Sir Joseph No. So those are our references and yeah, and our icon references for the diagrams. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you to the team from UANP.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, what a day to be talking about a single version of truth. Um, let's move on to our next presenter from the University of Santo Tomas to talk about UniHub, a central repository web application for the IICS IT department of the University of Santo Tomas. Uh, we will have, and I hope I pronounced this name correctly, Hans Emmanuel Singh.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Hans.
Hello.
Yeah, let's see if we can improve your microphone a bit. Can you speak up just a
Hello.
little?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you a little bit better now.
Okay.
Take it away, Hans.
Can you see my screen? Good afternoon. I'm Hans Emmanuel Singh. I'm an information technology graduate of the University of Santo Tomas, and I'm the backend developer of our research. I would also like to introduce our group members. Lawrence Flores and Gabriel Villarama is our quality assurance. Jester Emiliano, our front-end developer, and our advisor, Ma'am Ronina Tayuan. The Faculty of IT Department in the University of Santo Tomas is using a third-party cloud storage to store and submit their files. The department also has an inefficient way of announcing meetings, memos, deadlines of submissions, and attendance monitoring. But what if there is a more efficient and centralized application exclusive to the department where problems commonly encountered in a third-party application will be addressed? This is where the idea behind UniHub came from. UniHub is a web application that will serve as a strategic management tool for the IICS IT Faculty Department of the University of Santo Tomas. UniHub will support users, in any case faculty members of the university, in various problems. How does it work? The web application will have 4 roles: Department Chair, Quality Management Representative or QMR, Deputy Quality Management Representative or DQMR, and a faculty member. The department chair will be the one to register users to the system. Once registered, the users are required to update their default password to their desired password and also to set up their profile. All users will be able to see the posted announcements which are created by the department chair or QMR and can also view their personal and other faculty member schedule on the dashboard. Faculty members can also see those who are clocked in. This page is where the department chair can create, edit, and archive announcements. Faculty members can also view all the announcements in this page. This page is the repository. The department chair will be the one to create the folders where faculty members can upload and download documents. The upload function will only limit the maximum file size to 50 MB. File format is also limited for security measures. Admins can create deadlines and monitor the submissions of faculty members. Users are then notified whenever a deadline is created. The department chair can also download the submission report generated by the app. The system also allows the department chair to send memos to faculty members and see if the memo has been seen. Since the IT faculty is manually doing their attendance through pen and paper, and our objective is to provide efficiency, the proponents decided to add a feature where faculty members will use biometric fingerprint scanner to clock in and out. The biometrics is connected to the web application, and all attendance logs are stored in this page. A weekly attendance report can be generated and downloaded by the department chair. The methodology used in this project is Agile Software Development Methodology as the Web Application Software Development Lifecycle Model. By using this methodology, the proponents ensured the collaboration between the client and the developers. This satisfied the client while continuously developing the application. The said methodology also helped the proponents to adapt to quick changes in the requirements of the client. The proponents gathered a total of 38% of the faculty members and were asked to try the system. They were also given a questionnaire to evaluate the web application. Here are some of the results. 80% of the respondents finds the application user-friendly. An application with a user-friendly interface appeals most to digital users of today. 80% of the respondents think that the functions of the system are organized and well implemented. For an office-related application, it is important that it is organized and centralized to deliver tasks in the most convenient way possible. 80% finds the application easy to use and understand. As I have said earlier, a user-friendly interface appeals most to digital users, especially if it is easy to navigate. 60% of the respondents agree that they will use the system frequently. This means that the application will be an efficient tool for the users. With the suggestions gathered from the target users and client to further improve the system, here are some of the recommendations. Currently, the web application only allows the department chair to use the memorandum feature as a form of sending messages. Based on the recommendation, this memo feature will be replaced by a chat feature so that instead of department chair as the only person to send messages in the application, all users will be able to send messages. Since the web application is only under for the IT department of the IICS, it is suggested that the web application is to be applied in all of college departments. Since the web application only provides the feature of monitoring attendance of the faculty only, it is recommended to develop a feature for filing their leave of absences. With data security as pressing issue of today, given the resources, the application can be upgraded to a more secure domain with an SSL certificate. This application will improve reliability while producing rapid services. It will also lessen the workload of the faculty members and reduce time consumption. Applications like UniHub can be a more efficient and effective alternative to other third-party cloud storage, given that it has system consistency, user-friendly and easily understandable interface, and a centralized, organized, and more secured system. This ends my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hans. Let me just check in on the next presenter. Just making sure if Ruth is already ready with her presentation. All right. From the University of Santo Tomas to speak about network infrastructure redesign and VLAN configuration of Marikina City Hall. We have Ruth A. Kawili, who will be the last presenter for the afternoon before we go to our Q&A. Hello, Ruth.
Yes, well.
All right, there we go. Your audio is okay, and we're ready to hear about the Marikina Municipal Hall.
Sorry. Okay.
There we go.
Again, good afternoon, everyone. In behalf of my group, I will be presenting to you our capstone project, Network Infrastructure Redesign and VLAN Configuration of Marikina City Hall. And I am Ruth Kawili, together with my two other co-authors are Ambe Matthew Tabernilla and Redmark Soto. We are from the Institute of Information Computing Sciences of the University of Santo Tomas, and as well as our technical advisor, Mr. Arthur D. Ollanda, from the same institute and university. On the next few slides, I will be introducing our client, which is the local government of Marikina City. Established in 1996, they are located at the east of Manila, and their city is also known as the shoe capital of the Philippines, and they have 16 barangay. And the Marikina City Hall is situated at the heart of Marikina City, and the management information systems and call center, they are the one who assisted us, and they are the one who introduced or endorsed us to the LGU. And the said department, MISCC, caters 17 departments inside the City Hall and 9 other departments outside the City Hall. For the project context, the following will be discussed: the current topology of Marikina City Hall, the VLAN management issue, and the summary of current devices. Here is the Marikina City Hall current topology. They have an extended star topology. They don't have the concept or idea of backup. So they have two core switches connected to the firewall, and the firewall connected to two ISPs, and they don't have a networking router. And the MISCC department, again, is the one assigned in managing the data center of the City Hall and provides network services and maintenance to 272 users inside the Marikina City Hall. Each department was segmented on assigned VLANs. The good thing about being segmented is that the interruption of department is contained on that VLAN only, but the affected department will only be reconnected when the MISCC manually reconnect the department to the network. There will always be manual maintenance. There's the next issue that will be discussed is the VLAN management issue, that once a device pings a device under a different VLAN, it can still receive a reply, or the ping is successful when it should be not. The developers propose to reconstruct the network by changing the extended star topology of the City Hall into a two-tier hierarchical topology with two layer 3 core switches on stack mode, and to configure port security, Ether channel for redundancy and fault tolerance. And here is the summary list of existing devices in the Marikina City Hall. Again, as I've mentioned, there are 272 users. And they have 9 servers, 27 switches, and not all those switches are not only in the server farm and a firewall. Purpose and description is to solve the VLAN management issue and enhance the network infrastructure of the Marikina City Hall to be scalable, reliable, and a cost-efficient network. General objectives are to reconstruct the network of the Marikina City Hall, implement a new set of configurations for the VLAN management with inter-VLAN routing. Specific objectives, implement the proposed design, the two-tier hierarchical topology, apply redundancy and fault tolerance through Ether channel, address and solve the VLAN management issue, enhance user management through Active Directory by applying additional group policies, and implement an additional service, which is the DHCP server. Here is the scope and limitations. The scope is two-tier hierarchical network topology that will be simulated. The proposed system will be simulated in GNS3 and VMware Workstation. and as well as the VLAN management, inter-VLAN routing, inter-channel redundancy and fault tolerance, port security, and the devices that we use on the actual implementation came from the Marikina City Hall itself. So we did not purchase anything for this project. The limitations are the remote sites or departments outside the premises of the City Hall were not included. The the firewall image we use for the simulation phase was pfSense firewall for the Fortinet FortiGate, which is the client's firewall, is not free to download on the official website of the Fortinet. Actual implementation is in partial only, for we were not allowed, of course, to interrupt the live network of the City Hall. And the following departments that were included or participated in our implementation are planning, land management office, Marikina settlement office, and Macedo public information office. Here is the methodology that we use, which is the network development life cycle. The NDLC is a methodology used by the developers to analyze the behavior of the network of the client and determine the improvements needed to implement on the network. They designed methodology that has a guide with a step-by-step approach to build a new topology that will solve the problems that detected on the network. The network is always subject to change and it must adapt or rather support a dynamic environment. So the network should be updated, maintained, and enhanced every now and then. And we also use the qualitative and quantitative approach in data gathering. Example of those were conducting a set of interviews, observation of the environment of the establishment, observation of the transactions of the employees, and the observation of the server room itself. Here is the proposed design. Here is our proposed design. Sorry. The current network infrastructure of the Marikina has an extended star topology, as I've mentioned earlier. One of the disadvantages of using that kind of topology is that it has only one source or the central device, where all the devices on the network relies on that point. And once that device or the central device failed or has been shut down for any kind of reason, the whole topology will follow. In short, this topology has no concept of fault tolerance or backup and is not redundant. The current network has no networking routers, as I mentioned earlier, only a firewall that filters web activities and applications of the users, and the routing protocol is on the two core switches. Our proposed design consists of a collapse core design. Design has the current firewall of the client, which is a Fortinet FortiGate that is connected to the two internet service providers for maintainability purposes. In case the primary connection failed, the secondary or the other ISP will catch the function of connecting the network, or rather the whole network, to the internet. The firewall filters inbound and outbound web and applications activities of the users. In the proposed design, the firewall is connected to the two core switches, and the core switches were configured with Ether channel for fault tolerance and redundancy, port security also for the switches, and unused ports were shut down to prevent open port attacks, and VLAN configurations. And lastly, the core switches, are both connected to the 22 access switches to have redundant paths via Cat6 cables or the Ethernet cables. In case of failure of one of the two core switches. On the other hand, the server farm has an updated Active Directory with additional group policy objects configured, and an additional server for the DHCP to distribute and assign IP addresses to each device connected to the network automatically. for the, here is the, as I've mentioned earlier, the function of the firewall is to filter web activities, and here is the list of denied keywords configured in the web-based GUI of pfSense. So if a user will type or will attempt to type these words, no results will be shown. Instead, a warning will appear. And here is the group policy as based on the standards of the standard group policies used whether in public or private sectors regarding the password age, password length, lockout threshold, lockout duration, lockout counter after, and complexity requirements validation. Both the IT administrators and ID staff and City Hall employees were just the same. And other group policies, so most of the group policies were disabled for the IT administrator and IT staff, wherein all of them were enabled with to the City Hall employees. And for the testing and results, we have 12 main test cases. 30 test runs consist of both successful and failed results. In functionality, we conducted tests like VLAN connectivity, VLAN isolation, and we have a 67% success rate. In reliability, we have a 60% success rate. We test the response time of the network, redundancy, and the fault tolerance, and the rest is 100% success. To conclude, the fault tolerance through link aggregation eliminated the problem of departments being disconnected from the live network. The addition of the DHCP server solved the problem of IP usage, in which case a user can obtain an address of someone else's address, resulting in a conflict of IP address. Better channel gives redundancy in case another link fails, which solve downtimes in the Marikina City Hall, allowing services to continue. VLAN management by by implementing trunking for inter-VLAN routing solved the City Hall's problems with VLAN, in which case a ping from a certain VLAN can still be received when it must not. And I mean, that is their VLAN management issue that we already solved with this project. And GNS3 and VMware Workstation can be used as simulators to simulate and test the proposed network. Here are the recommendations of the developers. When simulating a live network, it is best to cover all the network topologies, including remote sites, that the client must fully understand the existing network infrastructure. In simulating using a firewall, it is best to use the same firewall as the firewall of your client, but in our case, we could not, for the image is not affordable to us as students. For a smooth and efficient simulation of a proposed network using a network simulator, it is highly recommended to use a device system unit or laptop that meets the system requirements of the network simulators. And here is the recommendations. And the iOS network topology to prevent loss or a backup those. And of course, the pfSense I mentioned earlier. That's all. Thank you.
All right, Ruth, that was quite the buzzer beater. Very interesting presentation, especially since I'm from Concepcion Uno myself in Marikina. Anyway, now we move on to the next portion of the second half of our presentations, which is the Q&A. Let me just double check everyone can hear me, right?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. As with earlier, anyone from the panel can ask any question.
May I?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so good afternoon, and my first question will I would like to throw this question to our first presenter, Mr. Molihan, for the project Augmented Reality Ordering System with Data Analytics. Sir, I would like only to clarify or to inquire if you consider in the study what type of the coffee shop that your study will focus on, because there are a lot of coffee shops that we have already, like to go or a restaurant type? And in addition, did you consider on the selections or qualification of the respondents, like the frequency of visiting coffee shop, or probably it look like us on delivery, or probably on a lot of things that it can be considered on how to qualify? Because I understand that you have only selected 30 respondents, but without any stating qualifications.
Yes.
How do you select this 30? That's why I'm just qualify or to clarify if you consider a lot of qualifications for them to be included on your respondents. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Okay. First of all, the only focus of my study, sir, is only for the customer experience. Wherein I just only searching for all the factors that will affecting their experience when it comes to ordering. That's why in the early presentation that I have, I just discuss all the problems that they encountered using the survey questionnaire, using my research instrument, and then the face-to-face interview to them. And one of the din po doon is my developed application also can only give an 3D augmentation of food, just only to give an attraction to the customer, and then the data analysis just only for a new feature. So these are just only my attributes or my actually I believe when I remember when I present this to my panel. Actually, this is my thesis in my they are just only focusing my study on the customer experience. That's why I came up to this study.
Can I have a follow-up question on that? Because
Yes.
when it's customer service, there are a lot of factors that customer service can be experienced. Like,
yes,
as I mentioned, on the different types of coffee shop, diba? It's look like it's on the restaurant type ba siya, or it's a type of a grab and go coffee shop. So that's why I would like to clarify in what particular coffee shop or type of coffee shop that you are mainly focused in the conduct of your study. So it's in a restaurant type coffee shop wherein there are a lot of varieties of foods to be considered,
yes,
or simply on a kiosk type of coffee shop that is only a grab and go coffee shop. So tendency when say coffee, it's a coffee shop. It's typically it's all about coffee without anything on the side. But when I say it's a restaurant type of coffee shop, there are a lot of varieties to be included.
Okay.
I hope I understand, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is just only for the coffee shop. Actually, I have a client for that. No, this is a starting business for the Libertad, a small coffee shop. But my client also wants to adopt this application that because this I'm focusing on the for the implementation of this developed application. I believe the type of this coffee shop is mainly where they don't have actually technology yet. It's just only a computer and also a server for their Wi-Fi only. So not that just to a big company already, but this is just only in a middle type of a coffee shop or restaurant.
Hi, sir. Can I follow? So I
Yes.
am Marita Espontanilla. So my question
Yes.
is, since augmented reality and machine learning are two disruptive technologies that bridges the gap between the physical and virtual world, would you
Yes.
consider embedding a machine learning functionality in your study? If yes, in which part?
Actually, the machine learning that I integrate for my augmented reality is the a priori algorithm. The a priori algorithm here is where it learns from the past preferences of my every customers. Actually, my data sets here are every transactions. There are one or multiple item sets, which my application can I can find the hidden patterns from that. No? So the a priori algorithm will learn the buying patterns of the customers so that the application can eventually can give the best combination or the menu pairings of every meals every time they choose the meal.
Thank you, sir.
Sige. I have a question lang din. This is Rafael Aquino. For the same group, since your study is focused more on customer experience, how do you ensure consistent customer experience given that people have a wide range of devices? How am I to consistently say, I have this phone, then someone else has this tablet? What if that experience is not the same because a tablet will display it bigger?
Okay, in my study actually, in my documentation for this is, the limitation for this is my application cannot be downloaded outside from the restaurant. No, from my application is only intended for that restaurant, wherein the restaurant can only provide the tablet when they want to order. No, actually, I forgot to show the how it works, how the flow will happen, but the staff will be the one to give the tablet so that the customer will experience the quality of the good augmentation of food using the tablet device. And in my interview to my client in Litio Cafe, actually that name of that cafe is the Litio Cafe, is they are planning also to adapt the and also this is okay for them to to use the tablet for augmentation.
Okay, sige. So, a follow-up na lang to that. Given that your first iteration for this is the staff will give the tablet, isn't that a possible source of bottleneck again, since you're going to be creating a queue to access the tablet?
Okay, for that, there's a process for that when the staff will give the tablet to the customer once they will order for a meal. So the staff will only the staff will give the tablet, and he or she will wait only for the tablet to, if the customer is already directly sent the orders to the kitchen display. So meaning to say, for the safeness, for the security purposes, and for the maintenance for that is the staff will be the one to wait for the customer to order using the application, using the augmented reality application, and once they are done, they will be the one to get again the tablet, and then that's it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. For the same group, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So, just additional question on your research work. I noticed that the respondents profile, you only have 30 frequency, a total
yes.
But on your presentation, there are a lot more. So, can you tell me what's the discrepancy all about?
Sorry, sir. Sorry.
Other people
sa
don't have 30 frequency or respondents, but on your
Yes.
presentation earlier, I noticed it's more than 100. Can you just
More on
you have your presentation
more.
earlier. You have more respondents compared to what's written on the paper.
Okay. Actually, it's fixed. Fixed to 30 respondents, no. Which I get all the demographic profile of my my respondents, which is only the, of course, male and female, no. And then I forgot also to show the age as a part of the demographic profile. This is just only using the mean for the ranking of what would be the most the most challenges or issues that affects the customer experience every time they dine in, and how it will give a negative feedback to them.
All All right, and last question on my end. You mentioned also that your work is based on ISO 9241,
Yes, sir.
and ISO 9241 is a series of standards. Which series are you referring on your thesis?
Okay. At first, I forgot the first ISO that I used, but I prefer this ISO because this ISO that I use in my research is this is pertaining to the this is more on the human-computer interaction or the user interface. This is more on your setting or getting the quality of the interaction of the customer, especially using the user interface. No, that's why the three attributes here is the effectiveness, the satisfaction, and the efficiency.
Yes, can you tell me what part of the ISO number?
9241, sir.
Yeah,
Then
so
meron din po siyang from year because every year din po is nag-update din po yung
Okay, so marami kasi siya. Anyway,
okay.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. Welcome.
So let's ask other group for UST, the group of Lawrence. Hi, Lawrence, you're still there. Lawrence, are you on the call?
UST.
From UST.
Hans, is this Hans's group or Ruth?
Jester, Lawrence, Jester.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
You're there on the call?
Okay, there we go.
So, just a quick question. You mentioned that you have proven that this is easy to use.
Yes, sir.
How did you measure that?
Um,
That your work is easy to use?
we distributed questionnaires to the faculty members, and they answered. They tried the system, and were asked to evaluate the web application.
And what scale did you use?
Sorry.
What scale did you use? Did you use 5-point scale or different methodology in measuring? Or you just asked that, is it easy to use?
We just asked. We just asked if it's easy to use. According.
Thank you.
I would like to ask a follow-up question to that group. Sir Singh, about the UniHub. I understand that there is an attendance monitoring system as part of the feature of your project. Is the system included a attendance per class period? Because I do understand there's a different way of checking attendance as a non-teaching staff to a teaching personnel. So since you are talking about faculty members, did you consider the attendance per period?
No, sir. They only do the attendance once they pagpasok po ng.
Because I do understand that teachers can be absent even for a certain period of time per day, even though they are present the whole day, but for a certain classes. Now, how your system evaluate that there is an absences or non-appearance on a certain period of time based on your system's integration?
Unfortunately, we don't have that feature on our system. They only we don't have that.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
I'd just like to ask a follow-up then about how your metric for measuring was, since you released a survey to the faculty of your department. Wouldn't you say that it's already skewed because these are people who are already adepts at using IT?
So, sorry, sir. Please repeat the question.
So right, you released a survey to the faculty who are going to use the system, and you got a good experience generally from them. Wouldn't you say that's also a bit skewed already, since your sample population already knows how to use or are very comfortable using IT systems?
I believe this biometrics will make their mas mapapadali po yung ano nila sa
Okay.
Okay. Is your system connected to the university's website? Because it's intended for one of the feature is allowing faculty members to submit documents. Is it or do you intend, if not, to connect it to your website, to the university's website?
No, ma'am. But the client said that once we turned over, they were the one to provide the host or domain for the system.
To secure confidential data, this is another question. What encryption algorithm did you implement in your system? It says in the documentation that you are encrypting.
We encrypt our data using SHA-256 encryption, which is almost impossible to crack.
Okay, thank you.
To add na lang din to the question about privacy, you said that we can view or users can view the schedules and information of other people through the system. Isn't that a big data privacy thing? That, for example, me, I can see the schedule of another person.
Well,
and same goes for me, that people know where I can be at certain times of a day.
Well, the client asked for approved for that feature, so
okay, so it was a request by for project scope. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon again. This is for the group of the agile methodology driven approach to a sales and inventory system, which is the second presenter. Hello. Okay,
Hello,
sir.
sir.
Okay, sir. Just want to clarify, what are the criteria or qualifications that being used to assess the prototype? Kasi when you presented that there is already an ease of use and pleasant appearance, reliability, and even completeness and readiness. But since you are doing it as a prototype system, so how do you qualify and assess those criteria to be evaluated?
We had a form be distributed to those who were potential users of the system, and we had them try out the prototype given what it was, so that they have an idea of what we were planning to build and not just giving them diagrams. And then they rated it on a scale of 1 to 5 given the criteria, and had them give feedback on why the rating was so.
Sir, can I clarify again? When you say prototype, it means there is no existence of the system. It's only a figure or illustrations how the system will work.
The system was built, but the goal wasn't to complete it to a full functionality. It was more to give them an idea of how it would be implemented if they wanted to pursue it.
Okay, sige. Noted. Thanks.
So my question is, your system is about sales and inventory, but I would want to clarify where, in what part of your design or prototype is the sales, because I only heard of mainly inventory. So what particular process or sales function do you have in your output?
Hello, Miss. So one of the sales features that we have in the system, uh, if there's a case of whether a broken product has been sold to customer, or a wrong type of product has been delivered, but it's marked as sold, the company can always go back to its ledger, to its sales ledger, and check the records and correct the mistakes that was done by the employees of the company. So by having a record of the sales and the delivery, we can pinpoint the mistakes of whatever transaction was done between the company and the customer.
If I may add to that, we also track sales in the form of the order slip. Since the order slip contains most of the data for an actual sale to be created, we do or we do gather data regarding the sale to that degree. But it was a request of the client to not include payment of the order so far in the tracking for now. So we only track what was being ordered by who and when it was delivered or fulfilled. So in that sense, we had sales in the system, but we never tracked whether it was paid or not, because as per the request of the client.
And to add to that, we also take note of the clients that they have. So for every order slip, they keep track of the clients that order, whether it's an individual or a company ordering.
Just letting everyone know, we're about halfway through our Q&A, and we have 17 minutes remaining on our clock.
I just want to ask a question to that same group. Did you conduct a business process review when you created your prototype, or did you just automate their process and bring it into a system?
By business process review, what could you explain a bit more what you're asking?
Because one concern I have is, did you really go through the entire life cycle of their business? Did you try to eliminate certain processes already that were not needed before automation or before development?
We attempted it, but we cannot say that we had a full view of it because we were only limited to the information the client was willing to provide. So as far as this section of the process was concerned, we did cover every possible scenario of how the processing of the order slip could go and how the customers could interact with the system. Of course, we simplified it in the diagram, but anything beyond that, such as how those documents would be presented to the accounting department, and as such, we weren't given information, so we couldn't assess if there was anything that we could improve regarding those parts. But within the process of processing order slips and their inventory, we did look at everything they did. We went with each meeting to the branches, conducted the process with them as well, and tried to see if we could eliminate other steps to speed up the process as much as possible without, of course, asking them to change too much or do things that they didn't want to do.
Okay. Question for the different group. Network infrastructure led by Ruth, Pachu, and I think Mrs. Mark. Are you there?
Yes po.
Okay. This is with the Marikina City Hall VLAN configuration. I'd just like to know and understand why is it that you did not recommend a DMZ on the new VLAN configuration? Why is it there's no DMZ regarding your firewall? What firewall did you use?
Hello, sir.
Hello? Yes, what firewall did you use?
On the simulation phase, we use pfSense po.
And why is it that you did not recommend a DMZ zone?
DMC.
Particular reason?
Hello, sir. Because on the firewall, sir, we were not, we admit that we were not focused on the firewall. We were focused on the VLAN management and the reconstruction of the network infra, because their firewall, according to the client, they don't have any problems or issues with that. So they always emphasize that we want our VLAN management issue to be fixed.
All right. Any particular security implementation on your new VLAN configuration that you consider?
In our VLAN, sir, we just aggregate the departments on their respective VLANs, and then our other security features were on the group policies mostly.
Okay. And last question for your group. Why is it that there's no in the cloud network that you recommend to? This is all on premise.
Hello, sir. Can you please repeat the question?
Why is it that you did not include cloud technology on your new VLAN?
Okay, so we propose it. We suggest it to the client, but they don't want to rather implement it for that time, because that time they were under renovation, and then it will cost a lot of time to propose a budget for the cloud according to our client.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. For the last group, you mentioned that you conducted 12 main test cases with total of 30 test runs, and I noticed that the three qualifications, usability, security, and maintainability, got a perfect or 100% accuracy. Now, may I ask, are your test cases interrelated from functionality to usability and so on and so forth? In that case, since you got functionality at 67 and reliability at 60%, why there is no impact to the other qualifications? Kasi diba, if the functions is, if the features is functional, so therefore it will be having a good impact to the use of to the usability and even on the other sector, on the other side.
Okay, sir. For the functionality and test and rather reliability test, we conducted on the functionality we conducted VLAN connectivity and VLAN isolation. there are failed test runs because of the softwares and the equipment we use, so that there is a negative impact on our tests, on the functionality, and as well as on the reliability, on on the rest of the tests, like the sustainability. There's no negative impact.
Okay. So my question for the group is, since you redesigned the network of Marikina City Hall, how did you manage to only use the current devices with no additional, and that you also managed to incur no expenses?
Uh,
How
as
did you
I
do it?
as I've mentioned earlier po, we did not purchase anything, whether it was hardware or software. We just use the uh, current devices or spare networking devices of the City Hall or from the MISCC, because our project coordinator and our technical advisor uh, advise us to uh, push or pursue the MISCC or the client to give us uh, some networking devices, and fortunately they have set spare devices that they can lend onto us, because we were really not obliged to purchase anything for this capsule project.
Okay. So another question. You mentioned earlier that you did not test the your redesign in all or 100% of their infrastructure. So what percent have been tested only? So what particular unit, if you only tested it to selected areas? What
Oh,
percentage?
the testing, we had a simulation phase, but on the actual implementation, or rather on the actual testing po, we conducted it on a department room of on in the inside the premises of the City Hall, and we have 4 participating departments. For they are the only ones who were available, or they are the ones who can be interrupt on their work, because uh, that that department room was on the second floor of the City Hall, so the departments below or on the ground floor cannot be interrupted. So we test the redundancy, fault tolerance, and the effectiveness of the two-tier hierarchical topology, and the percentage will be for the actual implementation po would be, I think, 40 to 50% po, due to clients request or demands that those 4 departments will be the only ones who can participate on our actual implementation.
Thank you. That's all.
Do we still have time to ask?
Checking our timer. We have 5 minutes.
All right. So, a question for the UST group under.
Just clarifying, sir, I think the audio is a bit low. Is there a way to come closer to the mic?
Question for network
There we go.
infrastructure integration. So, is the group of UST handling network infrastructure of St. Gregory Academy still present here? So, for the VLAN again, just a quick question before we end. How many client machines can now be connected on your new setup?
Okay, sir. On our new setup, just the same number of uh terminals of the City Hall, which is 272 users or terminals po, including the terminals on the MISCC or their IP.
So there's no increase of numbers.
There's no increase po.
All right. So what is the impact of your project to the implementation body?
The impact of this is it can be beneficial to the employees for the idea of backup or yes backup because we apply or we implemented multiple links on the course two core switches. So if one of those links has been shut down or unplugged, then the connection will not be interrupted. And the issue also of the fiber optic connection has been solved, and for the beneficial of the employees, again, the transactions will be smooth and continuous as they serve their constituents, and also for the security of the sensitive or rather confidential files of each department, especially the departments that involves accounting, uh, uh, paying tax. Their files or rather their information or transaction can be secured.
Secured in what sense? Do you have implemented a data monitoring on your new VLAN? You mentioned that the data is secured. So how sure are you?
We implemented or rather applied a group policy that because before they don't have a shared secured shared folder. So for example, the folder or rather drive of the, for example, accounting department, it cannot be opened or accessed by any other departments, including the IT department in our new setup. And if ever that one of them, for example, an accounting employee lost access or rather they need a new credentials, the only thing that can be done by the IT is give new credentials. They cannot open the drive itself.
All right, thank you.
All right, and with that, I think it's time to close our Q&A portion. And we are moving on to wrapping up our afternoon with a few announcements, a few notes from our conference chair for the ITRC5, Mr. Romel Deocaris.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your participation in the 5th International Research Conference. I believe that after the day, we have a better understanding of what research is all about. Research is all about new learnings. Research is all about improving lives. I would like to thank the plenary chairs for sharing their time, despite their busy schedules, in evaluating the research and entries of the participants. I would like to thank the MCs for their effort in ensuring a good program flow. Lastly, I would like to congratulate all of the research participants for taking part in the ITRC5. Godspeed. I'm Romel Deocaris, and see you in the 6th International Research Conference.
All right, thank you, Sir Romel. And of course, we just need one more thing to close off our afternoon. we'll be hearing an inspirational talk and some closing remarks from Mr. Cyrus Paulo Chipi Buenafe of the Department of Information Science and Technology. Take it away, Sir Chippy.
Yeah, well, thank you, Remy, and good afternoon to everyone. It's quite a gloomy afternoon, I guess, due to the weather. But I hope that wherever you are located, you've had an enriching experience with our fifth UANP IT conference. Now, I'm probably the one keeping everybody from going on to their next appointments and the like. But I'll promise you, if you can indulge me with a few minutes, I'll promise to let you go sooner. Now, let me try to toggle a little bit here and see if I can share some screens. Okay, and well, I want to start off with this. The struggle is real. Okay, we know that we've heard this cliche from many people nowadays. The younger generation has been saying this to describe the difficulties that, in hindsight, everybody would face anyway, right? All of us, you and I, were all struggling, definitely, in whatever situations we find ourselves in. Now, especially now, this statement, the struggle is real, is quite pertinent with the current pandemic affecting us. As you have noticed, even how we've run our fifth conference was not spared from this struggle being real, right? Shifting from its traditional format, that is having a mass gathering of researchers, presenters, and discussing their points face to face, and moving all of that into an online format. But allow me to share, by way of closing the event, two aspects of this statement, the struggle is real, that everyone can take away with them as we finish the conference. The first, and perhaps more obvious angle of that statement, is that all of us were all faced with various types of struggles without exception. It is from these struggles and challenges that fuel the initial spark of how we conduct research in whatever field or discipline we find ourselves in. Now, without these challenges, these issues, these struggles, research, well, cannot properly begin. Now, I'd like us to move away from that romanticized view of research, okay, typically denoted in science fiction movies, books, literature, as something highfalutin, okay, into a more genuine view of research that is really grounded in realism. Okay, granted, there are some science fiction authors. For example, you have Isaac Asimov, and if you're familiar with his three laws, okay, in the story I, Robot, that actually paved the way on how we've done a tempered approach to artificial intelligence. But even authors like Asimov, I would say, understood that advances in science and technology cannot be divorced from the transcendent reality of the human person, the human community, the society where we live in. Yes, the struggle is real, and our research has to be real. Okay? It has to be realistic. Now, the second angle that I'd like to talk about is that doing research actually has its own peculiar struggles, right? The struggle of doing research is real. And I'm sure our esteemed panelists and definitely our presenters this afternoon know what I'm talking about. Okay? For those of us who've been doing this, sometimes we do this to fulfill some academic requirement, but we understand that research should go beyond mere compliance. Again, taking off from my earlier point, I'd like us to move away from that romanticized view, as I've mentioned, of looking for fantastic or grandiose results in all research endeavors. Now, if your project, my project, we've been able to come up with amazing results, then good for us. And definitely good for everybody else. Because we can actually say that the research that we've been doing will create impact, a huge, significant impact to society at large. But we should not be constrained to the idea that all research must yield amazing results, okay, before we can say that we've actually done honest research. And in fact, I would perhaps offer my personal definition of research as the pursuit of purposeful improvement publicized. So I'll repeat that now. Research as the pursuit of purposeful improvement publicized. So as long as you can demonstrate that improvement, big or small, doesn't really matter. It's an improvement that has not been shown previously in a public forum. And it's an improvement that was purposeful, meaning it actually followed a certain rigorous accepted framework. Then that is research, everybody. Yes, because that the struggle is real and that research has to be realistic, then let's get real. Okay? We should be running to the fire and not running away from it. And that's at the heart of research. Okay? And it is only then that we can actually reap the rewards of research. Now, before I close out, I know Mr. Jocaris has already mentioned this in his pre-recorded video, but I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude to all of our presenters, our panelists, to our keynote speaker earlier, Mr. Alan Bora, to the IST digital team. So this is a team, the technical team in my department that takes care of all the logistics for this webinar that we're having right now. Okay, definitely with collaboration with CRC, Remy De Leon. Okay, and to all the organizers headed by the conference chair, Mr. Romel Jocaris. Now, as you know, with the fifth conference, it only got tougher and tougher. You know, I mean, when we were doing this the first time around many years ago, okay, we were a little bit relaxed. You know, we were allowing a certain tolerance for error. But this is the fifth time around, and you know, we weren't really lucky to actually have the pandemic be at the forefront, okay, of the current conference. So I know it hasn't been easy, but I do hope, I sincerely hope that everyone had a great time with us this afternoon. Okay, with the authority vested in me by the University of Asia and the Pacific, I hereby officially close the 5th International Research Conference on Emerging IT Trends in Asia and the Pacific. See you all on the 6th conference later in the year. Thank you again and stay safe.